Hello and welcome back. MC1 Gamer here, bringing you, hey, another unlocking of Age of Sigmar. We are restarting with the General's Handbook 2017, and today we have Tyler Emerson. I will say it correctly this time because in my preview video, I unfortunately I used the wrong last name. There's a lot of Tylers in the Age of Sigmar sphere, but you know, Tyler Emerson is here with us, and he's done a lot for the community, and we're going to talk about Sylvaneth. Thank you for joining us, Tyler.
Yeah, Mitch, thanks for having me.
So Tyler, you've been playing Sylvaneth for quite a while now, and you've put out some blogs and a lot of content regarding Sylvaneth. Can you tell us about your your experience with Sylvaneth and any thoughts you might have about it with the new rule set?
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, they've been my primary Age of Sigmar army. I was always a huge fan of elves. Back when I was playing Warhammer, I took a 20-year break, as a lot of us do, real life stuff. And yeah, when I got back into it, I picked up some elves for a little bit, did a mixed order, before we had the General's Handbook out. And then when they came out in July of last year, I was all in. I'd always loved Alarielle with her backstory, and I thought she was a little underutilized in Warhammer Fantasy. So when I saw they turned her into this Wonder Woman goddess, and all of the narrative and the lore and everything, it was just incredible. Always loved the Wood Elves. So yeah, man.
Yeah, Miss Thunder Thighs.
Yes, still such an amazing model. Yeah. One of the best they've ever produced. I love everything about the faction: the lore, models, play style, variety. They are, they've been in a good place competitively. So if you're interested in the match play and going to tournaments, I think they've been in one of the best places since the beginning. Where if you play them really well and maybe get a little fortunate with your matchups, army lists you're facing plus scenario, and the order in which you're doing that in a 5 or 6 game tournament, you've got a shot at taking out tournaments. But I would say they're a little more challenging, all else equal, than some of the, what many of us would consider the tier 1 armies. So maybe your Disciples of Tzeentch, or back in GH16, your mixed chaos with, or maybe now in GH17, your 120, 150 bloodletters. But you can win games with them.
Yeah, I've had some good experience with them actually myself. I have so they're one of the first of the newer armies that I picked up, and I kind of liked them I kind of liked them. I felt they were unutilized back in Warhammer Fantasy before Age of Sigmar came out, where you didn't really have a tree man army. You had them kind of as a mix with Wood Elves. And when the idea of a tree man army came about, my son saw the picture of him, and he was just thinking Lord of the Rings, Ents.
Right.
So yeah, I had to get them, and they play very interestingly. Maybe you can. I know you've written a lot of content and some strategy about it. I've done a few unlockings, but I dare say, most of my experiences with Death. I do have some experience with Sylvaneth, but I think you have a lot more experience than I do. Why don't you tell us about, because you mentioned this with the tournament scene. Yeah. Tell us about some of the strengths and weaknesses of this army, because they definitely have some holes, but they kind of make up for it with other things.
Yeah, they do. That's what makes them fascinating, because they have very well-defined counters. The number one, of course, as every Sylvaneth player will tell you, and people get tired of hearing it, mortal wounds. Mm-hmm. They just melt to mortal wounds, which is great, because every army should have at least one hard counter. I think in the meta you should see a very solid rock paper scissors, and not seeing armies that are really strong from a general purpose standpoint. So that's not them. They have some other counters that are a little more nuanced that maybe we could get into in terms of how you can play them, that a lot of people are not familiar with or don't really think of immediately. Like one is, of course, area denial, board denial. So you can run Sylvaneth without a lot of Wildwoods on the board. I found it a little more challenging. Yeah, you definitely need to build a list with that in mind. Maybe Alarielle in that list. She can be. She gets really good, or she's particularly strong from a general purpose standpoint if you don't have a lot of Wildwoods on the board. But in terms of strengths, they've got a bunch of them. I mean, they are very good at death by 1,000 cuts. So I love playing armies that do, I always call it the walk and chew gum armies. So they do a little bit of everything. Magic, movement, combat, shooting, they do it all. They don't necessarily, you can build lists for them to go hard in one direction. I think on average, though, they're best as a jack of all trades, kind of doing a little bit and being very flexible and responsive to a lot of different armies you might be facing. So yeah, they do a little bit of everything.
Yeah, one of the things I've noticed, and maybe you can elaborate with some of the things you've seen on the table, with some examples, is one, they resilient. They may have weaknesses to mortal wounds. They have really good saves, and typically, or they can inhibit attacks, which we'll go through when we look at some of the war scrolls. But they do have a lot of healing, and there's a lot of redundancy in terms of that healing that allows them to, find a way to make it back. But they also have some really interesting movement mechanics. And you mentioned area denial. So can you speak a little bit about that? Because I think you're talking about the connection with Wildwoods and some of their ability to place them on the board.
Yeah, absolutely. So the army, for the most part, again, you can run them without a lot of Wildwoods, and I know some people have done that successfully. I always do it where I have 6 Citadel Wood bases. So you can take up to 3 Citadel Wood bases per 1 Wildwood. So I like to limit it to 6. I know there are a lot of Sylvaneth players who refuse to play with maybe less than 9. I think it gets a little nuts if you've got 9, 12, 15 of Citadel Woods on the board.
I had 15 at one point.
Yeah, all right. So.
And I got rid of most of them because I found that I never used that many. So.
Yeah, you can get by. We'll see with GH17 and GH16, you could get by with 6. Okay, so the way that the army tends to play, like one of the main ways that I play the army is, okay, so when you're deploying, you'll usually take the Acorn of the Ages on your Branch Witch. Maybe another hero, but often on the Branch Witch is one of the wizards. And Null Root, for example, was the popular battalion that most Sylvaneth players ran competitively. And now, as we'll get into, that might change a little bit going forward. So you would have to take a Branch Witch, 5 Tree Revenants, and a True-Lord Ancient. So the True-Lord Ancient would usually be your general. Okay, so you put that Acorn on the Branch Witch, and then I would usually set up a template, Wildwood or Citadel Wood, in my deployment zone, so I don't deploy my models in the area where I want to drop that Citadel Wood. And so then I deploy my models within 3 inches around it, so that then in my first round, I can then drop that Acorn, and then I've got most of my units within 3 inches for then teleporting to the pre-deployment Wildwood that you always get to set up as one of the battle traits for Sylvaneth. So either players will do one of 2 things. They'll put that pre-deployment Wildwood in one of the deployment zones. It happens before you roll off for sides, or they'll put it somewhere in the middle of the board. Like Border War, you'll put it on one of the objectives in the middle. So you can then use that Launchpad Wildwood in your first round to teleport guys into that pre-deployment Wildwood, as well as maybe a Wildwood that you could get out through your Verdant Blessing spell or your Silent Communion for True-Lord Ancient. So in that first round, you've got usually 3 ways to get out Wildwoods. I'd say 2 ways, because Silent Communion is a 50-50 roll that fails 80% of the time. That damn thing never goes off.
I know exactly what you mean. 4 up tends to be you don't get it half the time. Yes.
No. So yeah, that's one of the key ways that the army plays, and we'll get into a little bit later. One of the, I think, fascinating key questions for Sylvaneth and GH17 is whether you're going to need, from a competitive, all this is going to be from a competitive standpoint, tournament standpoint, are you going to need to actually continue to play with a 1-drop battalion, or maybe a 1-drop battalion that becomes a 2 or 3 drop due to allies, in order to get your Wildwoods down where you need them on a number of the scenarios and to start bunkering up and scoring, as opposed to knowing that you're likely not going to get that first turn, and thus you might be going against a number of armies that could do that to you in return. And so now you've got to chew through 30 Volkite Berserkers on a 4-up, maybe a 3-up with a 4-up Feel No Pain in order to score on that objective. So yeah, I think that's one of the key considerations.
Yeah, there's more teleporting and ways to bring models into the battlefield outside your deployment zone than there have ever been because of all the new allegiance abilities. So when you talk about an area denial, for anybody who hasn't played with or against Sylvaneth, the deployment of these woods tends to have a proximity limit. So I think, if I remember correctly, one of them is a 3-inch from any other models, and one is a 1-inch. Maybe you can help me distinguish which ones are which. And here's the real big thing. A lot of people weren't sure about this. When they say against any models, that's scenery too. That's where area denial can also get you.
Yeah, so they did clarify it in the latest FAQ last weekend. The Silent Communion is from the True-Lord Ancient, is the only one that works where you cannot drop the Wildwood within 3 inches of any models or any terrain. So that can be quite difficult to get that Silent Communion down now that we know it is 3 inches from terrain. But everything else, Verdant Blessing, is Alarielle's Metamorphosis. If she blows up a unit, you can replace You can drop a Wildwood, as long as, again, it's with outside of 1 inch of terrain and other models. So yeah, everything else is 1 inch.
Right. Gives you a little more flexibility, but especially with some busy boards, and Age of Sigmar just craves more dense terrain. It can very much limit you. And then, of course, the movement of enemy troops can just like with summoning, can really limit what your options are. So absolutely, that one drop thing I think is a big deal, and it has been used for many Sylvaneth players. But I agree with you. This is a magical time for Age of Sigmar with the new book, because we're really going to rediscover what that meta is going to be and what the competitive landscape is going to be with all the experimentation. We're kind of starting resetting from zero again.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I know. At least for this army, I can already tell it's going to be a process of, well, at least a process of learning other potential play styles. I mean, it had pretty incredible, I would say, list building options in general within a tournament setting. Yeah, it was maybe a little narrower if you really wanted to try to optimize the competitiveness of the faction. But I think going forward, at least for a while, we're going to see a large variety of lists. They're going to be all over the place, which is exciting. And one more thing on the Wildwoods, if there are any TOs out there, and again, Sylvaneth players might hate hearing me say this, but one recommendation is to, when you're setting up your boards with the terrain for tournaments, space where Sylvaneth players can drop 2 Citadel wood bases, up to 2 per Wildwood, but try to limit it where it would be difficult for us to drop 3 Citadel woods per Wildwood, because 3 Citadel woods, as you know, Mitch, takes up a big space on the board.
Oh yeah, it's the Sylvaneth blossom.
Yes. Another thing with that, as we found out shortly after the book came out, you have to have, and it was actually in the rules, just most of us missed it.
Oh, I misread it.
Yeah, you have to have every one of those Citadel wood bases within 1 inch of all of the other ones within that Wildwood. So you can't snake them out like some players were doing when the book just came out. So that's another thing to consider. But yeah, 3 of those in that little triangle takes up a big footprint on the board. So I think it's good for tournaments to really orient to where, yeah, you can get 2, but make sure you let Sylvaneth players get at least 2 on there in a few spots. Otherwise, it can be rather difficult to play the army.
Yeah, I like more dense boards. I definitely think there should be alleys and areas of openness, just because that creates danger zones, danger areas. You don't want the entire board to be oversaturated. But traditionally with these types of board games, these strategy games, that's really a very rare thing. We don't usually see, unless you go to sometimes a smallish type tournament where there's an abundance of terrain because they have maybe 20 tables. You're not going to see that when you go to Adepticon, where they oversaturate the board and there's multiple levels. You go to something like Holy Wars, and they've got custom tables. Every one of those tables means something, and they have a different theme, and they've been built nearly from scratch. They tend to you have a situation where you could have boards that are just very, very dense, multi-layered too.
Yeah, absolutely. Which is fine for narrative.
Oh, it's good for competitive too, but so one board may be really dense, the other one may be really empty.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
But the Sylvaneth was one of the first that really introduced a completely new mechanic as to make something unique to their army, which we've seen translated with many of the newer armies, having something that was a completely new type of rule that was really hinged to that army. And with Sylvaneth, it was built, a lot of their abilities are built on this terrain piece.
Absolutely, yeah.
So it is a very much a part of the army.
Yeah, they've got a number of things that they do that synergizes with the Wildwoods, as you're saying. So one is you can build Sylvaneth lists with a ton of magic. You know, you can get it up to where you've got 10 or 12 spells you're casting per round, and that can be very significant with the Wildwoods, because you can, when you have a friendly Sylvaneth keyword unit, or actually, no, let me take that back. I need to remember the rules for the Wildwoods. When you have any wizard models on the board, friendly or enemy, within 6 inches of a Wildwood, and they successfully cast a spell, even if that spell is unbound, on a 5-up, you can light up those woods. You can rouse by magic the woods. And that does D3 mortal wounds to non-Sylvaneth keyword models / units within 1 inch of that Wildwood. So if you're casting 10 to 12 spells around, you know, you could be rolling a ton of rouse by magic. And another little trick you can do, I found out starting to get into the army and learning its tricks, is try to optimize it to where you can set up 2 Wildwoods right by each other. So you're just dropping 1 Citadel, like you're dropping maybe 1 pre-deployment and then you're dropping 1 from your Verdant. And then you get those wizards within 6 inches, and you're rolling rouse for both.
That's a nice tactic. I haven't tried that.
Yeah. So a lot of little things like that with the army that they add up as you get into it. I mean, it's one of those armies where there could be a high variance in, if you don't necessarily really look at how to play them, you can get your butt whipped at tournaments. But yeah, when you get into it and get a lot of practice, they can be pretty competitive against a lot of builds. Yeah,
it is. I found it's the Sylvaneth can be very swingy, and usually it's about matchup. And when you mentioned earlier about their weakness to mortal wounds, once you get those big tree men, tree lords, tree lord ancients on the ropes, they can go down pretty quick. I mean, they have 12 wounds apiece, but their defense is typically against normal shooting. And if you can start dropping them, their effectiveness really plummets. And as everybody who's put out Durthu knows, he looks great on paper, but oh my God, how many times? I mean, I know you've joked about it. I've seen it. I've done it. I mean, I wasn't this gray before I started using Durthu. He's such a magnet for everything because he's such a beast that a lot of times he doesn't really make up, doesn't match his points because everybody's targeting him, and sometimes he even gets into combat and then your dice fail you.
I found the trick for him is to not have him within 3 inches of a Wildwood for his plus D3 attacks. He goes to pot when he's got those plus D3 attacks. Just rock him with the 3. He is perfectly fine.
He's a curse. It's a curse.
18 damage every time. That's happened in 3 games. Like statistically, of my games, he has been a lot better outside of 3 inches of Wildwoods than within 3 inches with that plus D3.
So let me go over some of the format for anybody who's new and hasn't seen a lot of my unlockings. I did a whole series of unlockings when Age of Sigmar first came out, just for everybody who was just trying to learn the game. And then reinvigorated it when the first GHB, General's Handbook, came out. So now there's just endless lists now with the allies. Creates just a huge dimension. But we're going to go over, I know in the past I used to go over 1,000 point, 2,000 point, 2.5K. And it just seems like the norm for the most part, barring escalation leagues and maybe these big events or tournaments or home games. 2,000 points is the vast majority of what people play. So we're going to stick to 2,000 points for the rest of this series, however long it goes until I get buried with my minis. And
you got a lot of factions to cover.
A lot of factions and a lot of options. I don't think we'll run out of them. And by the time, if we ever do, there'll be a new book. So the idea is we're going to have the format's now going to be 2K, but we're going to try and do 2K no allies. Just try to stick with just the sub faction, and we might even do some Grand Alliance ones where we do this as well. Then we're going to look at 2K lists with some different variety, hopefully with some different flavors of allies that may be pointing towards trying to fill in holes or make up for deficiencies for the army, and that's going to be how this is going to be laid out. And we'll talk strategy. We'll talk, we'll try to prognosticate, if that's a real word, on how well this army or these armies might do in the meta and what kind of plans you might have in terms of trying to tackle maybe some scenarios. But just to start, we have some lists, but I don't even want to get into this just yet. I want to show some pictures because you brought me some pictures of some awesome looking stuff that you've done, and I'm going to go ahead and share this.
Some friends of mine have done every chance I get.
Oh, friends of yours? Okay.
Get to plug some folks that I've worked with on the army. I want to take it. So if you'll indulge that, because they did some beautiful work.
All right, let me know if you can see this.
So this was the aspect of the hobby I need to try to get back into is painting. I've been resisting that. Mainly due to my OCD nature, which is if I'm going to get into painting, I'm going to have to get really good at it. And that will take a lot of time to get really good at it, so I'm not really looking forward to that, but would like to at some point. So this was put together by Unlimited Colors, a really great group in Poland that I got to know about a year and a half ago. Isn't that gorgeous, man?
That's amazing. I love the colors. And kudos to you for going to an overseas painting group, because I'd be worried about this stuff making it all across with the with shipping.
Oh, my God. It was torture, and because we had a problem with customs, and it was just before Adepticon, because I got it the day before Adepticon, and yeah, it was torturous. But I ended up not even being able to play in Adepticon because of work crap. Well, I got to play in the doubles, but had to skip out on the championship because of work crap came up. But anyway, yeah, I put together the color scheme for them, kind of wanting this mix of green, of course, the life force, and then some reds. And I just can't believe how well they executed it.
Let's take a look at this one here. There's the next one.
Yeah,
it's a little bit closer. Yeah.
So this was this was a modified version of the very first Sylvaneth list that I wrote, which ended up becoming a pretty standard net list. Now, to be fair, as Relian recently said on Twitter, the null root list and Sylvaneth GH16 pretty much wrote itself. When you look at that book, it just it popped out, and I don't really think you can fault Sylvaneth players for rocking different variations of null root. It was so unbelievably good. Winterleaf was also really good if you wanted to go with a lot of dryads, particularly going up against chaos. This build is particularly similar to Les Martin's build that he popularized on a Facehammer episode a number of months back. That really helped to kick off the null root variations. So yeah, this one, Durthu, Ancient. I like to run, and actually still will, 2 units of 3 sides. A lot of people run 1 unit of 6, 5 tree revs, 2 10 dryads, and 2 of 3 bows, of course. So yeah, that was that list.
Nice. And I actually ran, what was it? Is it the household, or is it what was the one where you it kind of encouraged you to have more of the behemoths, more of the tree men?
Oh, maybe Lords of the Clan?
Lords of the Clan. See, I tried to get I was running 2 ancients, a tree lord, and Durthu.
Nice.
So and a ton of dryads, and I think it was a Branchwraith and a branch witch. So I didn't even have Kurnoth Hunters. I didn't have any of these revenants, and I did really well with it. But I was using at times also I would use that Guardians of the Deepwood, which was a little bit of controversy because it was legit. It was in the app. It was in the book. It's a throwback to even 8th edition, but they translated over to and that one gave you some extra bonus. As a matter of fact, that one gave you another free Wildwood. And what happened was it was legal, and it showed up again. It was in the app with points, but now it's not in the new GHB. So I don't know what your viewpoint is on that. Yeah.
So it had point value. Sorry, you might have just said it. I missed it. It had a point value for GHB1.
Yeah, it's 100 points. Actually, I'm going to go pull it up right now, and you can tell me what you think about this.
Yeah, this is a good question. I'm sure they've covered this in GHB2 and what you're supposed to do in these situations, what they recommend.
Here it is.
I just haven't read it yet. Yeah, I do remember that one.
And it's a really nice one, and it encourages you to have 3 tree lords or tree lord ancients, any combination, 2 units of dryads, and you had 2 Sylvaneth Wildwoods. So it gave you some nice abilities. It was before some of the, I think this was before the actual tome even came out, if I remember correctly. I'm not sure, but this was a throwback. You still see it in the app, but we don't see it in the new GHB. So I don't know if this is legal anymore. I don't know if you can use this.
Yeah, that's a good question. Like I said, I'm sure that they might have clarified this, whether I just haven't read it yet, in the match play section for whenever you have pitch battle profiles, that have not gotten an update, what we're supposed to do. The Errant Questor, which if we get into allies, that's one that I wanted to talk about as well, because I think he's a phenomenal general purpose ally that we might see in a number of builds if he stayed lit, because the Errant Questor is a Stormcast Eternal model that was exclusive from Warhammer World. He doesn't have a pitch battle profile in GHB2, but he did when he came out. He was 140 points. So yeah, that's a good question, man. I mean, it might be a little more complicated with battalions because, of course, what they did with the battalion cost, they raised all of them.
Right.
And
well, this one was always more expensive than the rest. This one was always
that's
100.
True. Yeah, that's true.
Hey, if you get any info, let me know, and we'll throw that in there on a future show.
Yeah.
So one other thing before we start is talking about what to do because it's very expensive. Getting scenery with your army. It's transporting it too.
Yeah.
What challenges have you found with that? And I have my solution, so I'd like to know what your viewpoint is on this, even if you don't like it.
Absolutely. Real quickly going back, just to give a shout out to, so you showed the picture of those Wildwoods. Yeah, so those were put together by a friend of mine who runs a studio called Black Sight Studio, and he does all kinds of different terrain. One of the best terrain makers that I've found out there in the United States. Really, really great guy. So, yeah, aren't those? I mean, it was a complete accident because it turned out those are amazing camouflage for those models.
I have noticed that. That actually is that. Maybe you can elaborate on that because that is something I've seen. by pure accident.
It was not. Yeah, like I'm not. I joked on a podcast. I'm not devious enough to. I'm from the Midwest. We're not devious enough to plan that. And so yeah, that was. But yeah, I've had a number of players at tournaments completely miss 5 tree revenants or dryads hanging out there,
or a branch witch or a branch
witch. Yeah, totally, man. So I'm trying to get better at pointing out when a unit is. Yeah, just in case.
So this is a beautiful example of not just working with the trees, but look at all this stuff that's down here, all the debris, the leaves, the autumn kind of motif. Really, really nice. And I just love how with the differences in colors, and it definitely sticks with a theme, but it works. It really does. I see that this individual didn't go overboard with too many of the branches, because you can do that.
Right.
It makes it hard for your guys to sneak in there.
We wanted to, we were going to have a quick conversation about this. I wanted to talk about this because obviously there's still some confusion about this issue. But real quickly, to answer your question on the transport, that is probably the biggest drawback of playing Sylvaneth. There's all these damn trees you got to tote around everywhere. Probably the best way to do it is to magnetize the trees so that you can just easily take them off. And you don't. So I've glued mine down because Ben Johnson told me to glue them down, the lead developer, and yeah, I was like, all right, Ben. Well, you probably know what you're talking about. So, but
Ben says glue them down. You probably should glue them down.
Probably should glue them down. So that was my thought going into Adepticon. But going back, I still need to magnetize them. I've been talking about it for 3 months. So I would recommend doing that. So you can easily pop them off, and then of course you just got the Citadel wood bases themselves that you stack, and that's easy to transport. And then you have the woods, the trees, where you figure out a solution that keep them safe, but it's kind of more contained. You can kind of like smaller containers, you box them, put them on top of each other, tie them together, and call it good. And so, but what I've been doing is I'm always transporting them in this big container with 2 tables worth of scenery, going to tournaments or going to my local FLGS. So I put a long piece of cardboard where all 6 of them will fit in 2 rows, 3 columns, so all 6 of them, and then magnetize the bottom. So I've got a pattern where I took a photo of the pattern which they need to fit in there. They just barely fit. So yeah, that's how I've been doing it, and it's
cumbersome.
Yeah, it's a little cumbersome, but
so here's what I did. Now again, I had a whole bunch of the official ones, and I just couldn't transport all this. And I have stacks of these. I have my own custom, tray system. This is all magnetized here. This is my Sylvaneth right there in different stages.
Yeah, that's what I've done too for my army. Yeah,
and, I stack them where I have this sometimes it's bolted to the cover for the next one, and then I stack them up.
Really?
And I have one whole one of that with just trees. But it was just taking up so much room. So I did this. I took one of these playmats and I cut these out. I took a full, no, it wasn't a full, it was a 4x4 playmat, and I hacked it up with the exact footprint. And all the rest of the stuff I now use is just scattered terrain for various, RPGs or for other games that I can just stick a tree on, and that's it. But this works really well because this you could stack like 10 of these, and it's not even an inch tall. It's like half an inch tall still.
The only thing about that, which you probably know exactly what I want to say, is you got to have the circle for the trees, and you got to have them exactly where they go.
Here's my trees. Now, again, these are not Citadel woods, but I made these trees. This is the same footprint as that circle. I have another one of these discs that I put down on here, and that's the footprint. And that's where, so that way they know the tree. And believe it or not, this tree, look at all these different branches. It's more intrusive with this thing than the official one, because some people don't even put any more than just like a flat side.
Right.
They don't put all the extension branches on. I've even seen that just on the recent feed with this past week, where Sylvaneth was fighting against Seraphon. Oh yeah. And if you noticed, if you were watching that, and anybody who hasn't, go back and check that feed. And if you're not subscribed, you should, so you can do that. The guy that was playing the Sylvaneth would take off the woods, place his guys, and then put the woods back. Yeah, so he could tilt them so that they didn't. I'm very worried about that. The spindliness of the Sylvaneth models with any of these trees is very easy to break off little pieces. Yeah, that's why I need to magnetize mine, because that's been the biggest reason why I've given myself a very hard time about slow playing Sylvaneth and needing to get faster. Unintentionally, obviously, slow playing Sylvaneth, but it's because my trees are glued down. And so I'm trying to finagle 10 dryads to stay in cover within, so it's a pain in the butt. So, but yeah, that's a pretty good solution. As long as you got those everything has to be exactly right. This came up at Adepticon. It was the most frustrating thing for Alex Gonzalez when he found out about it, because folks were running the mouse pads
and they were putting Alarielle and Durthu and Drycha all in one Wildwood and claiming.
No, that goes too far.
Yeah, I guess you can't cover with those monsters, but they were putting them all in there was the point. Yeah, it was ridiculous.
I don't like taking off the trees and then leaving them off. I think that's shenanigans.
Yeah.
I also feel that if you're going to have the footprint, at least take the disc. You can move the trees just so you don't break everything. Let's be reasonable. But when you move, I don't particularly like moving across that footprint. Yeah. I will divert around the footprint, and then I'll place the model, and then I'll put the tree back. And that's it. Just makes sense. I just think that it just in terms of not just damaging the model, but also sticking and adhering to really what the rules are supposed to be. But there was an FAQ recently. We were talking about it on a forum today that. And I'm not really sure about the interpretation because I deal with the wordsmiths all day long.
Yeah.
I'm way too much on these websites. Vince says I should just get off the damn net, wait for the keyboard. I'll probably live longer, but I maybe I won't get banned from any more forums. But there's always going to find people who are going to have different ways of interpreting these rules. And one came up that I'm sure it's not the first time, but a recent FAQ. Maybe you could tell me what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, so this was, you intimated earlier the number of blogs. I have been doing this Age of Sigmar Spotlight series on Warhammer Community on the Sylvaneth, and so folks can just Google that and check it out. It's up to like 6 or 7 parts now.
Definitely check it out if you haven't already.
So in the process, of course, I needed to try to be as accurate as possible about content that was going on Warhammer Community's website, so that led to having a lot of back and forth email conversations with Ben Johnson behind the scenes about it. Ben, is this cool to go up on the Warhammer Community site as the way you're supposed to play it for Sylvaneth? So in that conversation, I was also helping him kind of collect a number of questions from the community to go into facts. So one of those was this question that kept coming up, which was, let's take a Frostlord and Stonehorn, which has a big base, and you could position your Sylvaneth models to where that with one interpretation, that Frostlord and Stonehorn could actually not reach within a half-inch to charge your models within that Wildwood, based on one interpretation of how to play the trees, which I think is not really great sportsmanship, is not really a great idea. It's not a great experience for that person, and that's a whole other conversation. So the way that they fact it is you can go up and down the trees on the woods, just to simplify play. So there are, I think, different interpretations of what that means exactly. But one interpretation is for that Frostlord and Stonehorn. Okay, now that means that, let's say I've got my branch witch hidden behind a tree, and I've got a row of 5 tree revenants in front of that branch witch, but I'm not entirely, it gets complicated, I'm not entirely blocking off that tree to where the Frostlord and Stonehorn could get to the front of that tree, climb up over it, and then get down to the other side. Well, it would just like the way that South Coast GT started doing with the vertical movement in most tournaments, it would be like that. You have to take into account the inches you're going up and the inches you're going down, and you measure up. So I think that's fine. But the other way that we've started doing in the tournaments that, again, South Coast pioneered was we measure from the volume of the model. So we measure from in the case of a model on top of a tree, like a Frostlord, which seems weird, but you measure from that base going down, and then you measure from the top of the branch witch's head going up. So that would actually allow a Frostlord to hang out on top of a tree and to be within 1 inch for strike. I don't know what the reach is on a Frostlord weapon. So it's awkward. I personally prefer that from just a gameplay experience to allow my opponent to kind of do what they think they would. But I can see it's open to interpretations. And then there's a couple of other issues with it, but I see you want to.
No, I'm waiting on you, man. You finish it up.
So that's one, which I know, like, that's not necessarily ideal as a solution. I think you're gonna have people who will say, I hate that. There are people who say, I like that. If you're running a Frostlord, you like, or whatever, you like that, because maybe some Sylvaneth players would say, I do not like that, because that's part of the point of the Wildwoods. It makes it a little more difficult to reach you in combat. I think you still have great ways that you can optimize Wildwoods. You got so many other ways that you can optimize them for your benefit. Okay, so that's one issue. The other issue is, so I'll set up the preamble on this. So my kind of middle path solution for Wildwood model placement was, all right, I'm going to play with the trees always on, and I'm going to put a lot of leaves on the, and kind of put all the branches and put a lot of leaves on those trees. Not a huge number, but a lot, to where I know that I'm going to be penalized by where I can place models because of the trees are on there and some of those, more of those leaves are on there. But I'm going to play it to where my opponent and I can lean bases slightly up against each of the tree. Whereas if you were not playing with the trees on, a lot of tournaments rule it to where you cannot go in those circles.
Mm-hmm.
So if you are playing with the trees on, I think it's a fair, again, middle road solution to say you can lean, both players can lean bases slightly over. Well, if you want to rule it to where you've got to take a movement penalty for that, that's fine. I never play it that way. If people want to play it that way, I'm all for it. I'm actually all for however you want to play it, ultimately. Like, my opponent really wants to play it one way. All good. Let's just establish how we want to play it. But yeah, so that really helps with just after, I mean, I've probably played 100 games or more of Sylvaneth now over the last year and a half. And just from a play experience and speed up, all of that, I find it so much better to just allow both of us to lean models and bases slightly up on those trees, not get insane with it, but it helps a lot. So that, yeah.
It's tough because each TO, each event, and certainly each opponent is going to have a different viewpoint on that.
Yeah.
And so, like, in the regional GTs out here, and some of them are starting to get bigger. The one rule that I've liked is you don't go over the footprint, and you can't rest on top of the footprint at the end of your move. But you can remove the tree, and that's why I put the discs down. Or if you just remove the trees on the official ones, it's whatever that circle, that divot is that's remaining is what it is. But, as a Sylvaneth player, you should definitely know what the landscape is with the TO going in, because it's a competitive situation. If you're playing a friendly game, it's as simple as just having a dialogue and easily worked out, and should be easily worked out. But when you're in a competitive situation, there's lots of little shenanigans that you never know when somebody's going to suddenly pull something out. Like, for instance, well, here's a fence. You can't finish on the fence. You have to be on one side or the other. Okay, well, I can go over the fence, but I can't kind of straddle the fence.
Right.
So I get, I think there's a rule that you can't do that. You can't be halfway onto that terrain feature. I don't know if that's true. That's what I've been told. I've never had it come up, but could it? Sure, it could.
Yeah.
It could mean that you can't fit your model where you finish your charge, if that's the case in a lot of situations.
Yeah, it's still a little wonky. I agree with you. As best as I can tell with this, I didn't really connect the dots, but with this new latest ruling in the FAQ where you can go up and down trees, as best as I can understand it, and some of the conversations I've been having, with the guys over there, is that it is related to it is okay to lean your bases up against the trees and to call that good. Like that's the intention, is to make that okay. Partly that's the intention because, again, with these bigger bases, that if you were to play it really strictly, you're not going to be able to get into combat with your Tree Lords, your Ancients, your Durthus, and your vice versas on the other side. That just doesn't, it just doesn't make any damn sense to me. I agree. Both for my opponent and for me playing Sylvaneth. It makes no sense. So
I'm with
from
you.
that, so from that standpoint, So again, don't be egregious about it, but I think that's the best middle road way to play it. But it could use a little bit more clarity.
Yeah, and I'm sure we'll see more of that as the tournament scene kicks up with the new book with that particular FAQ in mind. All right, so let's get into the lists. Let's talk about the lists. I'm going to go pull it up on my screen here. I've got an Excel sheet that you had given me.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then and as we go through it, I'm going to go jump over to the actual War Scrolls. So if you have your own list that you want to go through and look at it on your side, I'll go put up the War Scrolls as you go through each tick.
Cool, that sounds good. And just to establish some context up front for this, because thankfully, I do think, again, at least for quite a little while here, maybe until the meta gets a little bit better shaped, we're going to see just a huge variety of list building and competitive match play with Sylvaneth. I really think that's going to be the case for a while. So, and then of course we each respectively have our personal biases on how we like to build our lists. For my money, list building is very personal. You've got a huge number of variables that you can choose for your list that you're looking to check off. So I thought it might be helpful just to establish some of that up front, because I do have biases like anybody. In my case, I like to build lists with a few things in mind. So I love elite armies. That's why I got into Sylvaneth. So I tend to prefer relatively low model count armies, let's say 60 models or less, or 50 models or less. That might be a little more challenging, depending on what the meta looks like going forward. I think there's a lot of us think we might be entering into the age of hordes. Certainly horde, 150 to 190, 200 wound armies can be a little more challenging for Sylvaneth to deal with than a lot
Bring
of
it on!
armies.
I play death.
Yeah, absolutely. So I like elite armies, and that will bias at least a couple of these lists, and ultimately lists that I would prefer to play. Let's see what else. I like model variety. Gotta love all the models, and like to have a lot of varieties. I'm not necessarily personally a big fan of spamming one unit. If you're going to spam an Iron Jaws list with a bunch of brutes, more power to you. I mean, that like makes a lot of sense. If you're going to spam Skyfires, I would make a distinction between spamming Skyfires and spamming brutes. Me
too. I faced 27 of them at the Depticon.
Oh God. Yeah. Subject. They've been nerfed a little bit, but you're still going to see Skyfire spam. You can still get a lot of them, unfortunately. But hopefully the meta will. The meta's already started to respond to that as well, where you got a lot of armies that are a hard counter to a lot of mortal wound output. Like Tom's Nurgle is a pretty hard counter to Skyfire mortal wound spam. So anyway, challenging to play. I like an army that, like, power level 1 to 10, trying to do one that's at a 7 or 8, but if you play it really well, you get lucky a little bit, it can get up there to a 9 or 10, and you can take out tournaments. It's got to have playstyle variety. You got to be walk and chew gum, and then again, tournament viable. So those are some of the variables that are my personal biases. I thought it might be helpful to establish that a little bit because they inform a lot of the lists that I make.
Great. All right, so we have these up here. That's very helpful. I want to make sure everybody can see this. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go shift this over. Yeah, I agree with you. I think that you need to be flexible because you never know what you're going to face when you're dealing with a 2-day 5-game event. You can't limit yourself to be a one-trick pony, and that's definitely a strength, as you've already pointed out with Sylvaneth. So let's take a look at your first list. I'm gonna as you go through this stuff, I'm gonna pull away from this screen and I'm gonna pull up some of the war scrolls. And I also have the ones for the battalions and the mega battalions as well.
Yeah, the battalions would be really good because I have not played Winterleaf, so I probably would not be able to remember all the Winterleaf rules.
I'm going to follow your direction, so you tell me what to pull up, and I'll get it up. I even have the your allies as well, so that's all queued up.
All right, so we'll start. Yeah, we'll just go left to right. We'll start with Winterleaf with no allies. Of course, the Frostheart Phoenix is there, but he's not an ally because you can take 0 to 1 order units as part of the Winterleaf War Grove Mega Battalion.
Yeah, that's cheating. Cheating in a good way, but a little cheat, but you get away with it because it is legitimately a battalion feature. Okay.
Yep, absolutely.
Nicely done. Okay, next, good.
So we'll start with this one because I think, at least in my mind, there are at least a few key questions that I'm thinking about in Sylvaneth being competitive or not competitive in GH17 going forward. My general prediction is, so like I said, they were a very solid tier 2 army, or maybe a low tier 1, high tier 2 army. It's all in how well you played them, how well you were, your fortune in matchups, luck of dice, etc. Now, I suspect they're going to be at a similar spot, which is amazing. I thought they were in one of the best places of all of the Legion-specific factions of any of the armies in GH1, GH16. I think they'll be at a similar spot, but I'm not sure. I could see them being a little stronger, a little weaker, or maybe in a similar spot, but I do not think they're going to be demonstrably stronger or demonstrably weaker. So that's all else equal pretty good. Okay, so with that in mind, a few key questions. One is, in relation to this list, is whether you can still compete sufficiently well at tournaments without a 1-drop. Or whether you're in fact going to need that 1-drop, legitimate 1-drop. So a lot of Sylvaneth players going to tournaments would take Null Root or maybe Winterleaf, and therefore, at worst, have a 50-50 roll to dictate that first turn. Again, as we talked about with getting Wildwoods out, that was often significant for like Border War, Blood and Glory, etc. for getting those Wildwoods out before your opponent could even go, before your opponent could block up the board with area denial, getting those Wildwoods out onto objectives, and then getting your bunkers set up, getting your Dryads into there. I would often so like Border War, I did this to so many people, and it was annoying as hell, I'm sure, where I would put my pre-deployment Wildwood on one of the 2 objectives in the middle of Border War, in the middle of the table of Border War, and then I would get out either Acorn or usually Verdant Blessing with a good roll on the other one. And then I would navigate Realm Route, my 2 units of 10 Dryads and Scythes on each of those. So 10 Dryads and 3 Scythes over here, same thing on the other side. That's obviously a very powerful bunker. And so that's, yeah. So I think that is a key question right now. And this also relates to what we talked about in the Warhammer Weekly 5-hour episode looking at General's Handbook, competitive match play, is this concept of what Eric from Mortal Realms called alpha blocking, and what I also added recently on TGI.community is a little bit a different variation of that, of alpha bunkering. So alpha bunkering is 10 Dryads, 3 Scythes, 20 Dryads, all of that getting down, or 30 Volkite Berserkers, whatever it is, bunkering on an objective before your opponent even gets to go. I think that's probably going to be a more common play style on the competitive scene than it was in GH16. And at the tail end of GH16, we started seeing it more. So like, you know, Daniel Ford with his murder host that won Bobo?
Yep.
Yeah, so he had 120 or so bloodletters. He just swarmed the board with one of those 30. Yeah, it was crazy. And so you have these units. This is a long preamble, but you have these units where they can get a combination of key ingredients, as I said, Warhammer Weekly, where in the case of bloodletters, their key ingredients are immediate battle shock via the Blood Secretor plus probably a backup Blood Secretor, incredible speed through Murder Host, and then of course obscene damage output, you know, with like Killing Frenzy from Slaughter Priest, and then everything that you can do with bloodletters themselves and their mortal wound output. With Volkite Berserkers, you've got the amazing durability plus multiple the mortal wound output, right? Multiple saves. So when you find these units that can do the alpha blocking or bunkering, that have some of these ingredients together, I think that's what's going to be really nasty in the competitive landscape. Sylvaneth can do this. And the question is, how well can they do it? And so that's kind of the context for this first list of Winterleaf. So this would be an example of applying that alpha bunkering and potentially alpha blocking strategy and/or blocking strategy with Sylvaneth. So our Dryads got cheaper. They were 120 for 10. They're now 100 for 10. You can get a block of 30 mass regiments for 270. They were already pretty efficient at 120 for 10. So they've gotten better. They have a number of things that are amazing with them, just in case anybody doesn't know. 12 or more models, they get a +1 save. So you put, let's say, a unit of 20 in a Wildwood. They start out at 5 up, 4 up, 3 up, maybe get Mystic Shield a 2 up. Usually you're going to be facing Sylvaneth where they've got Heed the Spirit Song from the Tree Lord Ancient to reroll 1s, as long as they have the Tree Lord within 10 inches or a Kurnoth Hunter within 8 inches to have that beacon from the Kurnoth Hunters. So they are incredibly durable on average. You can do a couple of other things with them. They've got the -1 to hit. That's really significant within 3 inches of a Wildwood. So I think that, you know, Sylvaneth have always been able to do the alpha bunkering really well, and this is what this list is all about. So there's a couple of variations of this, but just to get started with it, so what do we got? Okay, we got Dryads.
You
okay,
want to put the War Grove? You want me to start with the War Grove?
Let's go with the Winterleaf War Grove.
All right. There you go.
Excuse me.
See if I can zip in there.
Yeah, so you can fit 20, just for reference, you can fit 20 Dryads within 2 Citadel wood bases. I think even if you play it where you cannot lean up against the trees and you're just playing it where you have to stay outside of the circle footprint, you have to finagle it. It's a little awkward. But yeah, you can still fit a unit of 20 within a Wildwood for everybody's reference with 2 Citadel wood bases. And obviously you could do it with 3 for Wildwood. Okay, so Winterleaf is a Mega Battalion, requires you to take Force Folk. I'll get into that in a minute. It just makes your Dryads even better. So the first one here, it doesn't really matter unless you've got an Ophidian Archway on the table, so we can skip that one. Usually doesn't come up. Embittered by War. So this is the one where each time you make a hit roll of 6 or more for Winterleaf Dryads, it can immediately make an additional attack with its Racking Talons. So Dryads start with 2 attacks, 4s and 4s, no rend, 1 damage. If it's in your turn, you activate, they sing to people, and that singing gives them, you pick a unit that within 3 inches of, you sing to them, and they get a +1 to hit, so now 3s and 4s. So, you know, that could be significant because that turns the 6-up into a 5-up in your turn to get those extra attacks. Maybe you're by Dam, turn that into 4-up. And then Revenge Against Chaos, so they get even better against Chaos, which, you know, in a tournament, you're going to probably be going up against a Chaos army at least once out of your 5 or 6 games, maybe twice or more. So that allows them to reroll, I believe, hits and wounds of 1 against Chaos. Did you see there if it was wounds too? On the Winterleaf? I think it was wounds
for
too.
the Winterleaf?
Yeah, that last one.
Yeah, let's go zoom in there.
You could zoom in there.
Oop.
It was the last one, yeah. Okay, Revenge Against Chaos, yeah, hit and wound rolls of 1.
That's not bad.
Yeah, this is actually, I believe, Sylvaneth. Yeah, so this is for Sylvaneth Winterleaf units in general. This is all of your units, which is incredible. Reroll hits and wounds of 1. Again, you're probably going to be running an Ancient as your general. As long as he's alive, you're going to be rerolling saves of 1 for most of your army, so that's very powerful. All right, so I think we're going to see Winterleaf a fair amount. So if we can go back to the... Okay, so now if we go to Forest Folk Battalion, I'll go through that real quickly.
Sure.
So Forest Folk Battalion is a minimum, normally outside of Winterleaf, it's a minimum of 3, well, it's 3 Dryad units and a Branchwraith. So Branchwraith is the one that is a -1 to hit against her in the shooting phase, so she's really good in that regard. When she's within 3 inches of Wildwood, she's at -1 to hit. Her spell is not great, won't even bother getting into it, but that -1 to hit is amazing if you're shooting at her and just help keep her alive as another 5/1 model. So Fade from View. This is a fantastic ability. What this allows you to do is with once per game in your hero phase, for in the case of Winterleaf, where you have to have an extra unit of Dryads, so you, once per game, can move your 4 unit of Dryads, and you have to do all of them. You can move them anywhere, pick them up off the board, and move them anywhere in your territory. Or anywhere within 3 inches of a Wildwood, anywhere on the board, as long as you're outside of 9 inches, of course, from the enemy. All right, so just that's incredible.
A lot.
Yeah, but it's incredible tactical flexibility, particularly if you're going to play for the 1-drop with alpha bunkering, alpha blocking, or just as a response in general to your opponent, maybe later game if you're just taking Forest Folk. I think a lot of lists would be viable just taking Forest Folk and using this tactic. Yeah, where you're looking to do it later game as a response for getting, for example, 20 more models onto maybe one of your opponent's objectives, like Border War, for example. You know, now with that 20 more model rule, where a unit of 20 more models takes precedent for scoring, as long as the enemy does not have a unit of 20 more models within range of that objective. So you could still use Forest Folk outside of Winterleaf, and I think it could be an amazing kind of tactical, flexible, approach for later in the game. All right, so going back to Winterleaf with the list, with the 1-drop with Winterleaf and Forest Folk. So you've got a list here that's obviously optimized around getting the most out of your Dryads and really Dryad spam. So I think we were looking at 30, 20, 20, so 80 Dryads, I believe, in the list.
Yeah, I was wondering. That's a lot of Dryads.
Yeah. So this one, I'm not sure how well optimized. To be honest, I'm not sure how well optimized any of these are, because I've played 1 game in GH17 so far, but played a ton of games. I've been doing a lot of theory hammering, so hopefully these will hold up fairly well as the games start to happen. But yeah, so this first one, yeah, so 10 of Dryads, 80 in total across the 4 units.
I can't help but think about the unfortunate loss of the discount that you're not getting from all those Dryad units because they're not maxed. that's the first thing I'm thinking of. You have 1 unit that's optimized for the cheaper version, but you got 3 more that are being underutilized. But I guess that's just because you needed the points elsewhere. Yeah.
So if you had taken, so you have to have 4 of the units. So you've got a few choices you could have made with this. You could have, let's say, gone with 2 units of 30, and so you would get 30 points back. And then maybe you take, for the other 2, 10. So you've got 2 units of 30 and 2 units of 10. To be honest, yeah, man, I'm not sure what's going to be an ideal general purpose and optimized build out for the 4 units of Dryads. The thought of this was a few things. So having 2 units of 20 maintains some good flexibility for the 2 scenarios that have that 20 or more model rule,
Right.
Total Conquest and Battle for the Pass, to where I could keep, say, one of these blocks of 20 in the hidden enclaves for most of the game, and then when needed, have them pour out from a Wildwood or pour out from Free Spirits. And now I take that back, because Free Spirit or Forest Spirits, there's so many rules with Sylvaneth, it's ridiculous. Forest Spirits is one of the battle traits along with Navigate Realm Roots. It's the other one where you can, so in this one you can keep your units in the hidden enclaves off the table, like Signs of the Storm, Stormcast, or whatever. But there is a greater limitation where, in the case of a unit of 20 Dryads, all of them would have to deploy wholly within 3 inches of that Wildwood, so you cannot snake them out. So actually, in this case, what I would need to do is to keep 20, probably somewhere that's safe, hopefully, and maybe round 3, bring them out from Forest Spirits, and then look to set up a drop with Navigate Realm Route onto a 20 more model objective in round 4, whatever it might be. But there's still some things you can do. So that was the idea of that, is maybe a little bit more tactical flexibility, taking advantage of that 20 more model. But yeah, to be honest, man, I'm not entirely sure what would be the right build out.
Yeah, it definitely would warrant taking a look at the numbers. The 20, obviously, you lose one guy, you're going to lose that advantage. The nice thing about having it at 20 as opposed to just like 2 10s is both those units have a little padding before they lose the benefit at the threshold of 12, which, if I remember correctly, is a save benefit. They get +1 to their
save over 12. Yeah, so that's one of the benefits of that. Maybe another argument in favor of the 230, 210 is that, yeah, you're getting the discount, but you could also would be able to maintain some flexibility there. You could have one of those as an alpha block, like Tom's Nurgle. Although I suspect, I mean, you could still do it without Sisters of the Thorn, which is another thing I'll quickly mention. But so where you get the first turn and you throw that unit at one of those unit of 30 across the enemy's frontage, and you string them out. So you navigate them from you put the unit of 30 on the board within 3 inches of your launch pad Wildwood in your deployment zone. You navigate Realm Route up to that pre-deployment Wildwood, which will be somewhere in the middle of the board, and then you string them out across your enemy's frontage as that alpha block where they're going to have to come into that unit. And then as needed, you leave a trail, of course, to get that -1 to hit from that pre-deployment Wildwood somewhere probably in the middle of the board. All right, so God, I haven't talked about, I'm usually the one asking the questions of other people and not talking about, it is like, I feel like I'm talking way too much, and it's insane how much detail I'm having to go into with Sylvaneth. It's crazy.
You're the expert. I'll help fill the gaps. I mean, you know this more than I do because you've been playing this more than I do. I know enough that I can help you.
Yeah,
but that's why you're here, man. Don't worry about it. I'm usually the one talking.
Yeah. Okay, so the thing with Sisters of the Thorn, that early on, Aaron, Bailey, Nico, shout out to them on our, so Let's Chat Sylvaneth was this thread I created around, I think it was July 20, I know July 20th, 2016, I think. I know that date because I looked at it today. Shortly after the book came out, I started this Let's Chat thread at tga.community, which, yeah, has gone on to have like over 2,500 posts, really active. If you want to find out anything and everything about Sylvaneth, just check out that post on tga.community. So one of the things early on with this was Aaron Bailey and then I think Nico, or in some order, it was both of them, talking a lot about Sisters of the Thorn, which we could take as either part of a Null Route or the Winterleaf, because Null Route, it's 0 to 1 order wizard, Winterleaf, 0 to 1 order unit. So if anybody doesn't know,
there's Null Route.
Yeah, so anybody doesn't know, Sisters of the Thorn is a Wanderer's unit. It's 220 points, 5 models, 10 wounds, and it has an incredible spell called Shield of Thorns, which goes off on a 6. So, you know,
this is the one where they're on stags. They're on like
they're on the stags. Yeah,
yep.
the
great spell. Yep.
Lydian stags. Yeah, amazing spell. I suspect we're going to see it in a number of other builds outside of Sylvaneth going forward, like say 30 Liberators, alpha blocking with a lot of buffs, Staunch Defender, Warding Lantern, all kinds of nonsense that you can get up on then. And then, so the thing with this is that Shield of Thorns allows you to reroll failed saves, and for every successful save roll of a 6 or more, it does a mortal wound back to that enemy unit that caused that damage to you. This is ridiculous. Again, I think you're going to see this a lot. So the combo that we did with that Aaron and others did early on with Sylvaneth is usually on a block of 20 Dryads bunkering up in a Wildwood. So they're sitting up with a 3-up save or probably a 2-up save, which then, let's say they got Mystic Shield on them, that turns that 6 or more mortal wound back into a freaking 3 or more mortal wound back.
Yep.
So imagine doing that with 30 Dryads alpha blocking, strung out, -1 to hit because you got the snaking back, you got Shield of Thorns on there. You're looking at a 5-up with 12 or more models, a 4-up with Mystic Shield, and a 3-up with Mystic Shield, and doing mortal wounds back on a 4-up to anything from the enemy that's coming into that frontage. So that, I think, is going to be a tactic that you're going to see. I didn't include it in this list, and I'm probably not going to run it personally. I'm just not convinced that, I don't know. I'll play test it. I'm not necessarily convinced that it's going to be. I usually try to think about what is optimizing the general purpose utility of builds and units. I'm not necessarily convinced that is sufficiently general purpose because, I don't know. As I'm saying it, they're not as resilient as Liberators. It could still be good, but I think we'll have to see on that one.
Well, it's a 220-point investment, so that's the big deal. And you're taking it to try to buff a unit, but it's a nice buff. That could be really, that could stymie somebody who doesn't know what to expect. And you could do it without these battalions, if I'm correct. If I'm correct, is Wanderers, which is where the Sisters of the Thorn comes from, right, is a legitimate ally to Sylvaneth.
Right. Absolutely.
So you could just take a Sylvaneth army and just take as part of your list a 220-point Sisters of the Thorn unit to get that spell.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Yeah, in that regard, excuse me, I think I was having a problem with it in this list and Winterleaf with the idea of a 1-drop. Yeah, because it seemed like it was too many points to be invested. You're already paying a premium, of course, now with as you should in a lot of these cases, for the Mega Battalion and the battalion itself. I think it was 310. You're paying 200 for Winterleaf and 110 for Forest Folk. So if you're then paying 220 for Sisters of the Thorn, which against a lot of armies are going to get killed. They're 10 wounds, they're 5-up save. You have nowhere you can hide them. Because I think that was the other problem that I had with them. And yeah, I think that was the main issue. I thought it would be potentially too much of a one-trick pony, a one-time use only, and you're not even necessarily guaranteed to get that spell off. It's on a 6. Right. Maybe you'll get lucky and you'll get an arcane buy, but there's no other way that I know of within a Sylvaneth that you're going to be able to get that up even more. I think maybe you could get, no, I think that's only in Branchwraith with Harvest Boon, War Grove. You get a +1 to cast. But yeah, so I think, it just seemed like it was mainly that they could die too easily, and it just seemed to be too many eggs in one basket type thing.
Right. A lot of stuff to remember, too, as you're exhibiting right now.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so going back to the list, let me get back to the screen here. Yeah, so this list is really optimized for taking that 1-drop in that first turn, where in a number of these scenarios, just as in GH16, in this case, Total Conquest, Battle for Skull Pass, Duality of Death. Now, the Knife to the Heart is not going to be as relevant, although certainly Alpha Bunkering, with 30 Dryads in your opponent's face stretched out could be a relevant tactic. Starstrike, I believe it's called, the one that was the new gift from the heavens.
Right.
That one is not as optimized for this, thankfully. By the way, man, I love how they've designed, at least in principle, looking at it in theory, I love these scenarios, dude.
Oh, the new ones? Absolutely. I like the idea of mixing them up, by the way, with the original 6 from the first GHB, just to keep everybody honest. I would not want to just do the 6 new ones, even though I think that would still work. I like the idea that now we have a larger array. It just gives you more things you have to think about. But I love that there are different ways to win on each of them, that you really that you could have a, like you just said, an optimized list that works for one, but it's not going to help you as much in the other. It could be a liability.
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely. So, but yeah, I think they're going to be pretty well balanced against one another. And of course, for 5-round tournaments, we might see that tournament knock out Knife from the Heart, the other version, the new version of Taken Hold. Personally, I'm a fan of folks including that. I'm getting off on tangents. I'm a fan of folks including that in tournaments because, as we know, that's one that's very difficult to get a major in. So it's a way of separating the women from the girls, if you will. So
yes. As anybody who's been into a tournament knows, there's always a problem when you have people who have the same number of wins, majors especially, and then you have to find a way to differentiate. And sometimes it can come down to paint.
Yes. Absolutely. Yeah, that's a whole other subject.
Okay.
So Scorched Earth, Total Conquest, Battle for Skull Pass, and Duality of Death, for my money, are all very good for alpha bunkering and alpha block or alpha blocking. That is, you can get an advantage in a number of games, matchups, etc., where you want to deploy these tactics within those scenarios. Okay, so that's what this list is designed to do. Now, if you go against another one drop and you lose that 50-50 roll, I think the list is still going to have some ways that you can be competitive. It might take a backseat. Okay, so as probably folks can tell just by looking at it, generally what would happen, do you want to run through these war scrolls? Or,
sure.
I wasn't sure how you do this.
The way I guess to do it would be, I'll go pull up the war scroll and you tell me what that particular unit's going to be utilized for, okay. Why you had it included and what the strategy is behind it.
Okay, so, I mean, I can real quickly give folks a high-level overview of what like I said, that's what this build is designed to do, is for those 4 scenarios in particular, but even decently, certainly in Knife to the Heart with your one objective in your deployment zone, and even decently in Star Strike, if you play it right and get a little lucky on where those comments come down, this can still work pretty well. But yeah, it's designed for that alpha blocking and or alpha bunkering, and to get set up shop on those objectives, force folks to come into you, really optimize the value of those Wildwoods, where you're going to be putting out a little bit of magic. And yeah, and then you've also got I can real quickly go and tell, you've got the Frostheart Phoenix, which you're going to buff up with all of your wizards. So in this list, you're looking at 1, 2, 3 spells you're going to be producing per your hero phase, as long as all of your wizards are up. Each of them, so you got 3 wizards, each of them going to be casting 1 spell. And as we know with Frostheart Phoenix, each time you have a successful spell cast, I think any wizard within a certain range, 10 or 12 inches, you're going to have a +1 to its save. Yeah, unfortunately, GW still needs to get the other half of that war scroll. It's so annoying.
Yeah, I know. There's a couple of those types of issues going on right now.
Yeah, I'll pull it up here while we're talking about it on the app. But sure. Yeah, it's some range to where any successful spell cast by you or the enemy, on a 2-up, your Phoenix will get a +1 to its save. So let's say you've got, you can probably easily get it to where he's on a 3-up in your first turn. And then you've got, of course, his 4-up, Feel No Pain, his Witness to Destiny from the Anointed on top. So that's a very tanky, durable unit. He's gone down in points, 260, now 240. And that's a piece, like some people will play it. Ben Curry with his Legion Badge Corps, he'll throw his Drazarath as a piece that he just wants the enemy to focus on. He'll throw it forward early game. I saw somebody do this running Seraphon at Slobberknocker, where he threw his Dreadstorian early doors in front of the army. Russell did this with a Carnosaur in the game against Les, he referred to early on the stream, Seraphon versus Sylvaneth. So that's I think would be one tactic you could deploy with the Frostheart Phoenix. Buff him up first turn before the enemy goes, make him really tanky as possible, throw him forward. He's that sort of bit of an alpha blocking piece, and folks are going to have to really focus on him. You could also potentially take a damned roll on him, take that damned roll, get a +1 to hit, makes him even 3-up on the Talons from the Frostheart, -1 rend, 2 damage each. Make that a 2-up, 3-up. I think it's rocking 8 attacks. Holy cow, 8 attacks. Wow. Yeah, that's going to dish out some damage against a lot of units in the game. You're going to get that charge off probably first turn. Put him up on the line, 12 inches. Move him forward. What are we looking at here? 16 inches. Holy cow. Yeah, he's going to probably get that charge off first turn. Get him in there on something. And he can fly, so he could potentially go over chaff if your opponent isn't being thoughtful about where they place their chaff or don't have enough of it to do it well. So yeah, I think he's a really nice early doors piece. Good save, good durability, good combat output. Take that damned, heal him back up with regrowth on a 5-up from the True Lord Ancient. Yeah, he's got regrowth, and so you heal those wounds back up with D3 wounds in the case of a non-Sylvaneth keyword. So yeah, I really love that piece, and it's another nice way again that we can take some mortal wounds, which of course we usually melt to. Mm-hmm. So all right, so you got that. On the Ancient, real quickly run through. I mean, Ancient. I think most folks know about the Ancient. I mean, he's the tank. And he's really central. If you're going against Sylvaneth, if you have an opportunity to try to take out that Ancient early, that can be a good play.
That's why I like doubling up with them, because I've had that experience. I've had plenty of experiences where that one Ancient that you take gets trashed, alpha struck, or shot off from distance. And I like having to double. I like having 2 of them. Plus, it gives you a chance, because we all know we're going to fail that 4-up to get another Wildwood.
God, yeah. Yeah, man. I need to play test some with double Ancient. I actually played over the weekend at a one-dayer my friend Lucan, he ran triple ancient and null roots, and it was effective. It was a close game. I ran my I need to punch you in the face list, and he ran I'm gonna magic you off the board list, and it was pretty balanced. It was pretty good parity there. But yeah, that's a good shout.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of double ancient, Dirthu, and Tree Lord.
Yeah, really, I'll have to look at that. That's interesting. Oh god, wouldn't it be amazing if that would actually be legitimate in this potential horde meta? If you could do that.
Well, yeah, but then the rest of your list has to be. That's why I don't have any Kurnoth Hunters, or I mean, it has to be Revenants or Dryads, and maybe you have a Branchwraith or a Branchwraith for that extra, the extra spell casting.
Yeah,
but.
Yeah, definitely. So, yeah, hot tip with Sylvaneth, not enough folks try to alpha strike Sylvaneth. That is a way that, in a lot of instances, you can do some real damage to the army. There are a lot of builds. Well, who knows? I'm talking this based on past experience, which could be completely irrelevant to going forward. But a lot of past builds, I would say, were quite vulnerable. I know my build was fairly vulnerable to an alpha strike. Partly the reason is because Sylvaneth have more of a built-in limitation than, say, Tzeentch, maybe, where Tzeentch can have ridiculous damage output, like from wizards with mortal wound spells and Skyfires, of course, that they can also block off the entire board with chaff. And we can't do that, all else equal. We're a small, lower model count army. We have to pay more. So, but I think that's good. It's a good built-in limitation with the faction. Okay, so Alpha Strike, it can be a good way to go when you're going up against Sylvaneth, particularly try to alpha strike that ancient, because he is really central to your army for all kinds of reasons. Reroll saves of 1, yeah, with the Heed the Spirit Song, 10 inches from him. All your units, your Kurnoth Hunters create a beacon of 8 inches from that. So anything within 8 inches of Kurnoth Hunters, which I was running 12, I'll probably be running a few less going forward, but still, usually you can get it where most of your army is rerolling saves of 1. That's obviously incredible. He gets out woods. He does all kinds of things for your army. You can turn him into a tank to where he has oaken armor. That's a pretty common choice. So he's just sitting at a 2-up save, rerolling 1s. And yeah, so he's really central. He does a lot of different things for the army. Gnarled Warrior, he ignores -1 rend. There's a few different alternative build-outs you can give to Tree Lord Ancient real quickly I can go into. One that I like to run, I'm curious if you ever did it, was Moonstone of the Hidden Ways on him.
Yes.
Did you ever do that?
Yes.
Isn't that fun, man?
Yeah, it's awesome, yes.
Oh, I love Moonstone. I thought it was undervalued.
Well, I don't think a lot of people were doing it. I mean, I heard about it a couple of times early on. Why don't you go into elaborate a little more for the audience? But I heard about it a little bit more early on, but then it just kind of went away.
Moonstone won me so many games at tournaments. Like, yeah, and just in general. All right, so Moonstone of the Hidden Ways is a Sylvaneth Wizard keyword only. So probably going to put it on your Ancient if you're going to do anything, as opposed to like Oaken Armor. And so what it allows you to do is once per game, you can pick up your Tree Lord Ancient anywhere on the board and redeploy him for just 4 inches outside of enemy units. So he's got a 4-up charge, only 4-up charge he needs to make. The utility of that, I mean, cannot be overstated. Like and also because I would run that in Null Root, and so he is the ancient, the Tree Lord dude that you take in a Null Root. And of course, as we know, with a household that you have to take in a Null Root, that has the Discipline of the Ages. So that allows you, when you get into combat with your Tree Lord or Tree Lord Ancient, to not allow the enemy unit or units to retreat from combat. This is
huge. I love this, by the way. Household is such a slap in the face to somebody else's strategy. And anytime you disrupt somebody else's plans, that is a big win. So maybe you can go over that with the household. Yeah,
man. This is what allowed me to. I mean, Tom knew it was coming sooner in our game in NashCon. Any chance to bring this up that I beat Tom? That was the one thing that I wanted to do at NashCon, was to play Tom and beat him. He's a really good player, and good friend, and so and his Nurgle list is disgusting. But I knew. And he knew of household, but his list is designed to do that off of bunkering. Well, all right, so I'm gonna use my. Did I do it? I think I did. I think I did my Moonstone. Maybe I forgot to. But the intention going into that game, now that I think about it, maybe I forgot to. It ended up not hurting me because I think I got my Ancient in either way. Either it was a 9+ regular charge with my Ancient, or something else, or it was the 4-up Moonstone. But the idea going into the game a few days before, if I played him, was to do the Moonstone in front of that 28 Nurgle Chaos Warriors, which of course is just on the line in his deployment zone. I knew that I was going to outdrop him, so I could go first, and then get that charge off. And with the household, his unit is stuck there in his deployment zone the entire game. He couldn't do his Sal throwing them forward nonsense, none of that shenanigans. So yeah, that has won me a number of games. I mean, another thing with this is like prosecutors on the board with Hammer Strike, where they want to move the prosecutors up, drop those big blocks of paladins in your face. Well, now you get first turn, Moonstone of the Hidden Ways, outside of the prosecutors if they've not been bubble wrapped. Yeah, I've done that against number, and so you're locking up those prosecutors, and that can be. So there's a lot of different utility of this.
Yeah, I love it. I love again anything that that befuddles your opponent's plans is a big win for me.
And it still catches people out. Household. It's so easy for folks to forget about it. Yeah. So that's one really nice combination. But I'm running Oaken Armor and Gnarled Warrior just from a general purpose standpoint of the durability. He's pretty important to this list. He needs to stay up as much as possible. He's still going to melt mortal wounds. Of course, regrowth, very standard.
So I don't have the screenshot for them. Can you go over what these both do?
Yeah, Gnarled Warrior is you ignore -1 rends, and Oaken Armor is it gives him +1 save.
Right. So you're going to get a better save going from a 3 up to a 2 up.
Yep.
And then you're not anything other than a -2 or greater, which is fairly rare.
Yep.
You're going to be basically locked in.
Yep.
On your save, which is amazing.
Absolutely. This also means that you can probably put your Mystic Shield somewhere else, like the block of 30, or in this case, your Frostheart Phoenix, to make him a little tankier, or your Kurnoth Size in combat. If you think you're going to, you throw your Size up in a Wildwood, bubble wrapped by one of those 20 Dryads.
Right.
Actually, even there, you're not, because you could probably get it to where they're not going to get hit. Yeah, either way, it gives you another option.
If you put it on the Dryads, can that get them to a 3 up or a 2 up?
It would be on Dryads and cover. You probably want to put it up on a Dryads. They would be on a 3 up with Mystic Shield and cover. And again, you can definitely get 20 of them in there in a Wildwood with at least 2 Citadel Wood bases, and then rerolling 1s from the Ancient.
Nice, very nice.
Yeah. So yeah, Branch Witch, Acorn of the Ages, Throne of Vines. Now a lot of us, including myself for a long time, and I was still doing this with my build because I only had one Branch Witch, Durthu, and Ancient. A lot of folks would throw the Acorn of the Ages and Verdant Blessing spell onto the Branch Witch. Acorn of the Ages is once per game, you get to generate a Wildwood for free, again up to 3 Citadel Wood bases, within 5 inches of that Branch Witch. Now you can snake those Citadel Woods. So you just get that first Citadel Wood base, the tip of it, within 5 inches of him, and you can snake out 1. But then, of course, you got to have, if you're doing 3, all within 1 inch. You can't snake 2 of them.
There's more versatility with 2, and frankly, you're going to be able to fit it much more easily in with dense terrain structures.
Yeah, totally. So that's amazing. Almost always, almost in my mind, mandatory if you're looking to play with Wildwoods. Usually, folks, though, including myself, would also throw Verdant Blessing on him, on her. Because just various like double. That's the way that you also generate another Wildwood, Verdant Blessing. You can generate a Wildwood on a casting value of 6, and that one is 18 inches. So again, just have to have the tip of the first Citadel Wood base within 18 inches. That's just, I mean, as you know, Mitch, they've got a massive footprint. Yep. So you can get that about anywhere if you deploy them a little bit.
Even 8 or 10 inches. These things.
Yeah. So
each of them
is like 10 inches, I think. 10 or 11 inches across, and then probably about, 5 inches.
Yeah, I place them right in front of my opponent's deployment zone at times, just flat.
Yeah, totally, yeah. A friend of mine, Brendan, would take Silverwood Circlet on his Branch Witch, and then he would do that with Verdant Blessing to get even further range. Silverwood Circlet gives you an extra 6 inches, so 24 inches on Verdant Blessing. Anyway, the reason I did not put Verdant Blessing on the Branch Witch with Acorn is because I've had too many games where she has been sniped before she's dropped her Wildwoods.
Yeah, she's very easy to go down. Very, very effective for even just small units of decent shooters.
Yeah. She's way, and obviously with the way that shooting works still in the game, you can still often get units to draw a line of sight from her, from someone, teleport and then shoot, whatever. So yeah, so I put Throne of Vines on her, and then Verdant Blessing on Drycha, which I'll get into in a minute. Again, so the thought there, real quickly, with Verdant Blessing on Drycha, again, is just to split up the Wildwood generation, just in case the Branch Witch gets shot. Like, for example, if I'm going up against another 1-drop with this list, I lose the 50-50 roll, and then they shoot off my Branch Witch before she generates her Wildwoods. That could be that's devastating for this kind of list. All right, so she's got Throne of Vines.
Do you sometimes double up on some of these spells, or I forget if there's a you can only take one of the same spell. I know you can only cast one. Yeah, because I've done things like regrowth and stuff like that. I've doubled up on some of them. So, yeah.
I think there's definitely something to be said about that. Yeah, especially regrowth. That would be priority number 1. I haven't done it. I'll have to play test with it. But yeah, have you done it much?
I've done it just because I typically my main list has been like I said, those four behemoths, 2 of which are casters, and then a Branchwraith and a Branchwraith.
Nice.
So the Branchwraith and Branchwraith typically we might back up on some of these spells in case, you know, if they're looking to cast it like Thorn of Vines or Regrowth, I might actually have that on one of those other main casters. So it's worthwhile doing. But you know, this is you definitely have some. I would say you're definitely in the a magnitude higher in terms of the capability for Sylvaneth list building than I am. So I'm learning a few things already just by having you here on the show. Thank you.
Oh, good. Well, yeah, one would think one would get better at playing the faction after 100 or so games.
Sure, I forgot. So, I've lost count after I hit triple digits on playing death in general.
Yeah, man. By the way, you're a hell of a death player. I was watching you a little bit at Adepticon and just listening to some of your episodes, not to blow smoke up your butt, but yeah, man, you're a really good death player, dude.
Thank you very much. I would imagine that I was a little outgunned on that one though. I took a team list and it was a lot of gun, but we'll talk about that another time. Thank you for the compliment.
Okay, so Thorn of Vines. So Thorn of Vines, you cast it on a 5-up, and what this does is it allows you, in this case the Branch Witch, it allows her to get plus D3 to cast, just to cast on any other spells. Now, we're running Winterleaf, so you're not going to be able to cast 2 spells with her, only 1. However, if you do not move her in the subsequent move phase, Throne of Vines stays up. Right. So your next hero phase, she's got that plus to her cast. Yeah. So that's really yeah. If she lives. Yeah, if she lives. Absolutely. I missed that, kind of broke out. Yeah, if she lives, that's the key. Yes. A big if. So if she lives, that means, you know, let's say, well, quote unquote average, let's say she's at a +2 to cast. So she's now getting Mystic Shield off on a 4-up, Arcane Bolt off on a 4-up. Maybe she's in range, probably not, for an Unleash Spites, her spell, which can be incredible, as you probably know, with, so it's 9-inch range, and you roll the dice. Let's say you get a 9 on the dice roll. That means any enemy units within 9 inches, you roll, in that case, 9 dice, you roll the casting value, and any 6 is a mortal wound. So with a +2, that turns that into an 11 dice, so it's kind of like a little Drycha calling the Flitter Furies at that point. But yeah, I just like it because of that +2 for for Mystic Shields. You know, to get that Mystic Shield, God, it's so frustrating sometimes on a 6-up. Get that to a 4-up or a 5-up, put that on your Dryads or whatever. I think that's a pretty good shout. So yeah, that's Thorn of Vines, and then finally Drycha with Verdant Blessing. Don't need to go into Verdant Blessing and get a little bit more variety. I think Drycha might now be almost an auto-include in Sylvaneth competitive builds for a number of reasons. If, in fact, we are entering into an Age of Hordes, and given the fact that, as we know, she no longer hurts herself with Colony of Flitter Furies, her spell, her shooting attack that's really good against MSU and elite armies, and then, of course, her Swarm of Squirmlings is ridiculous against Horde units. So real quickly run through those. Colony of Flitter Furies is a shooting attack that, as long as she only has 2 wounds or less, starts out on an 18-inch range. So you have her in your deployment zone, probably within 3 inches of a Wildwood, your launch pad, navigate Realm Route her forward, or maybe you simply bring her in from Forest Spirits. You probably want to, again, in this case, I want to use her to get that Verdant Blessing off, so she's going to be on the board. But so yeah, you're probably going to have to roll that 2-up on the Navigate Realm Route roll, which we haven't talked about yet. So, okay, so to walk through this scenario, I've got Drycha on the board in my deployment zone. She's back, and she's within 3 inches of my launch pad Wildwood. Okay, I launch her forward into the pre-deployment Wildwood, somewhere in the middle of the board. And then that means I put her down in the Wildwood. Then I got a roll. On a roll of 1, she can't do crap, which happens way too much with Kurnoth with Bows, as I found out in particular. So you've got a risk. If she rolls a 6, she gets to move again. Yeah, she gets to move again. So that could make a 9+ charge into a, well, actually, in her case, a 3-up charge, because she's got an amazing movement. But so a bit of a risk with this, you know, wanting to do Verdant Blessing, need to have her on the board. If you don't do Verdant Blessing, you can leave her off the board, not worry about casting spells with her round 1, bring her in onto a Wildwood through Force Spirits, and then she can shoot, etc. And she's got to be 9 inches away from enemy models, of course. So yeah, Colony of Flitter Furies, 18-inch range. All enemy units within 18 inches you roll 10 dice for, and any ones, or sorry, any sixes is a mortal wound.
Yeah, it used to be, for anybody who doesn't remember, where there was a lot of FAQ questions about whether or not she's affected by it because of the wording. Thankfully, they have changed that.
Yeah. Yeah. I thought it's good that, you know, some of the players, we were interpreting it in the way that was the worst for us, which I think it was absolutely the right way based on how within had been fact, errated before. So, but
it's
yeah,
good form. It's good form to try to interpret things the most conservative way possible, so you're not gaining advantage. I think that's just good. That's good play. I try to do that, but then there's always there's endless conversations about different interpretations. That's just a part of the game, I guess. But yeah, a lot of Sylvaneth players were just accepted that. They relented on that one, and thankfully, I think that's one of those things that that is improved, along with a lot of the point drops.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, absolutely. Thought they did an amazing job, incidentally, on the point changes, the point values. Maybe Durthu, that's a whole other conversation. There's some folks who think Durthu should be 500, some folks who think he should be 300.
I think he should have gone down just a little bit. I don't think he should have gone up. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, I was hoping for 380.
Yeah, 380 I would have been fine with. I'm happy with 400. I live with it. I'm used to it.
Yeah, definitely. So on the other thing on Drenches, she not only does not hurt herself anymore, but maybe more importantly, she does not hurt Sylvaneth units. She does not hurt Thorn units. That's huge. So now you can screen her off, block, chaff up, screen her with, say, 10 Dryads to take a charge coming her way. She's got what? I haven't looked at her war scroll. If you got a war scroll handy, let's see if she's got a. Oh, you got it up? Awesome.
I got it up.
What she's got? Yeah, dude, she's got 2-inch reach.
Right.
So she's swinging over the top on those Dryads or those Revenants, blocking her off to take a charge. So yeah, previously you would have had to worry about her blowing up those Dryads, which, as we know, are very susceptible to battle shock, potentially losing half the unit to even 2 mortal wounds. And then 1 or 2 going to battle shock, and now you're down to like 6 Dryads. Yeah, but so that's no longer the case. Really amazing. So that's Flitter Furies. Really valuable, really useful for MSU elite armies, blowing up a lot. Swarm of Squirmlings. So this one is a 10-inch range, got to be closer, but very doable. And again, you could still apply the chaff screen with say 10 Dryads. So you get her within. Well, I guess would you be able to do that with a footprint? I think you would.
You might be able to.
Yeah, I'd have to actually look at that, because 32 inches is just over 1 inch. Yeah, 32 inches is just over 1 inch. Actually, I guess you probably would not be able to do that, to have to be within range, because that would be 10 inches. I think you did be just outside of that. But anyway, you got to get within 10 inches for Swarm of Skirmlings. And let's say you've got a unit of 30 Bloodletters that you're looking to light up. For every model in that unit of 30 within 10 inches, it's got to be model, unfortunately. There is some appropriate limitation with this. Every model within that unit within 10 inches, on a roll of 3 up, it's a mortal wound.
This is a horde killer. This is the horde killer.
Yeah. Just now, one thing I want to try to play test with her with this is not this list, but the second list we'll get into, keeping her off the board. That way, you're not at risk of getting surprised with a teleport or God knows what coming your way and lighting her up.
Yeah, she's a target.
She's a target. Keeping her off the board, playing for the double turn, bringing her in at the round, bottom of round 1, bottom round, whatever it is. I don't know how often you're going to be able to do this. Again, it gets into this issue of, do you need to be building Sylvaneth to optimize getting the first drop, going first? Which I don't know the answer to that yet. It's one of the key, if not the key question for competitive Sylvaneth builds, I think. But so let's say you can play for that double turn, and you bring her in. She lights up something with Swarm of Skirmlings. She's going to be at full up health because she's been off the board. You're probably going to be able to bring her in within good range, 9 inches away from an enemy unit. Probably get a lot in range of that, and then you get that double turn. You're doing it again before she gets any return fire coming her way, potentially lining up 2 units. You bring her in, get her into position. Free spurs. Yeah, I got to have her there. But in that second time, you could relocate her with Neverrealm Route or whatever to light up another unit. So I think you can get a lot of utility in that before return fire, because she goes down pretty easily. I mean, she might look like a lot. But
that's why I like the idea of holding her back. I like the initial thought about that, because leaving her out there exposed on turn 1, even if you get there's a lot of 1-drop armies, and I do agree with you. We're going to be figuring out what the validity is of maybe backing off, especially with the costs of battalions.
Yeah.
Of trying to get the 2-3 drop armies, or living in my world, which is 14 drops,
right?
Where you just concede. But I because you can bring her in and pretty easily. I like the idea of positioning her where she's needed on turn 2.
She's like a Celestin Prime in that regard. Yeah, she's. I suspect you might get more utility, as you're saying, akin to leaving your Celestin Prime off the board until round 2 or round 3.
Right. Or the back half of round 1 if you don't get the first turn. Knowing that you're not going to get the first turn, having her there available.
Right. Right. So I think she could be especially valuable where you're building a list that is not designed to go first, but designed to go second. And then if your opponent gives you the first turn, great. Maybe you're in a scenario like Skull for the Past where you need to bunker up and get your Wildwoods out. A lot of opponents, I would say.
We got a comment from Vlad Nico who's talking about Sanctuary, where he says with Flitter Furies allows you to get in position, and with the Sanctuary you don't have to roll for the travel the wild ways.
That's right. Yeah, that's another good shout. Yeah, another benefit of keeping her off the board. Yeah, you just bring her in. And yeah, I was thinking in that situation where with this list, this first one, if you're wanting to put Verdant Blessing on her, you're going to need to have her on the boards to get that spell off. Or you could change it up a little bit where maybe you just go Acorn of the Ages, Verdant Blessing on your Branch Witch, hope that she does not get sniped off if you're going up against
her. You got to hide her.
Yeah, yeah.
Building.
Yeah,
it's
hopefully.
Not easy, but that's what I would do. So it's just like what I'm going to be doing with at least one of my Karen Wraiths or Banshees with my Nighthaunt unit, so I can transport guys in. You just got to hide them out of LOS.
I would say it's probably a safe bet. Yeah, man. When you're at tournaments, you would think that we're going into 2 years now into Age of Sigmar. Most tournaments hopefully are going to have plenty of line of sight blocking terrain, and then you're often I think the number of average drops are going to go up in the new meta, which I'd be interested in your views on that. But I would think the probability of you getting a first turn if you're taking 1 drop is going to go up, and it was already pretty high for Sylvaneth. So all else equal, you're probably going to be safe by putting the Verdant Blessing and Acorn on your Branch Witch. And then that gives you the flexibility to leave Drycha in the enclaves. And then, as Nico was saying, yeah, that's a good shout. Okay, so she's amazing, but you've got to play her well. And I do not know how to play her yet. I have never really played with her much. A little bit of proxy play testing a while back, but so we're going to be playing with her a lot going forward. I just think she's got incredible utility. Oh, question for you. Okay, so tournament. Would you say that I know how I feel, and I feel fairly strongly about it. I'm curious how you feel. All right, so you're putting your tournament list together with Drycha. Do you need to specify for the, let's say, 5-round tournament, you are either going to go with Swarm of Skirmlings all 5 rounds, or all 5 games, or calling it Flitter Furies all 5 games, or do you get to choose per game?
That's a good question. I think when you're picking allegiance, I think you're static. I think that if you're picking spells, you're static. I think when it comes to something like that, I kind of feel like you have the flex. It's like having reinforcement points. You don't have to determine what they are, but there are going to be some tournaments you should check in advance. I am not a GW rules guy, and I'm not the TO rules guy. You should definitely check with your local your TO and see what it is with your local meta. There's some people that might want to put a stop on that, but I don't see any reason why you can't have that flexibility. All
right, cool. One thought I had on it was these are put forward as missile weapons, so clearly these have missile weapon profiles, and in that regard, you would not be able to have the flexibility to go with 2 options, a different build-out option on your Grunstock Thunderers in your Caradron Overlord Army. You got to go with WYSIWYG, with the build-out that you've chosen. And now it's a little more complicated because you certainly can model Drycha with both.
Magnetize. Now you're talking my language.
Magnetize, yeah. So anyway, it's fair to say it is a greater advantage, probably obviously goes without saying, if you can choose. It is more of a limitation. It's debatable, is it an appropriate limitation to where you have to choose either for all 5 games? But anyway, yeah, we I think need to get a FAQ on that.
Well, let's. What is it? What is the wording on here? Where would it be? Is it on the description or is it within the abilities themselves?
Well, they've got a range profile, but yeah, the actual output is in the abilities. So, like for example, this is another issue.
Perform plays host to either a colony of flitterflies or a swarm of squirmlings. So you definitely have to choose. It's just a matter of.
Yeah, with the tournament. Yeah, do you choose for the tournament or do you choose per game in the tournament?
Well, I'll tell you what. I'm certainly of the mind of asking for forgiveness as opposed to permission. But I kind of agree. We're probably going to need an FAQ before that one is particularly determined. It really isn't. Yeah, it really isn't either or. It's like choosing between a lance and a sword for some of these profiles.
Right. A related issue, which we'll get into the next list, is on the Loremaster. But I'll save that for when we get into it. Okay, just to wrap up this list. I mean, yeah, let's see. Winterleaf, 30 Dryads. Yeah, the sides speak for themselves. The sides are probably going to be bunkering up.
I want to talk about the sides real quickly, if you wouldn't mind. Yeah. Sure. There obviously everybody's always talking about the bow hunters, but the scythe hunters are very effective. Can you just give me a feeling really quickly on the effectiveness and the validity of using the scythes? Because I see almost all over the place the bows, and very few times do I see the scythes. But I think some of the more advanced players are the ones who are really, trying to include the scythes, especially now, even though these guys went up in points, the fact that they are considered, battle line if.
Right. Wait, what's considered battle line if?
The hunters.
Oh, no, they're not.
They're not?
Nope.
I'm wrong with that? Okay.
No, I don't believe we got any.
No, we didn't. That's too bad.
But they did go up. We got Revenants. We got both Revenants, Tree Revenants, and Spy Revenants are actually just battle line now. Well, that is, sorry. Tree Revenants were always battle line. Spy Revenants are now battle line.
Okay, all right, gotcha.
Yeah. Oh god, that'd be crazy if Kurnoth.
Oh, I know. I was thinking.
If. That'd be very thematic, see it burst through. Oh boy, yeah. But anyway, yeah. So okay, so sides versus sword versus bows. There's also swords, of course, which we should talk a little bit about. Real quickly on swords, I think swords are going to make a comeback. We didn't see many swords, sides or bows with a common build out in GH16. I think we might see swords make a comeback, particularly because, of course, the expectation generally is we're going to see bigger blocks, bigger armies. And often those bigger blocks are going to have worse save. So swords are definitively better at 4-up save or worse. And they're slightly better at 3-up save or worse. I believe that's the math. Maybe a little bit more than slightly better than the sides. A lot of people took the bows because, for a few reasons, like they would take Celestial Huracanum with a +1 to hit bubble, which of course I think went up from 320 to 380.
380,
yep. And so, a lot of people would spam bows. That was more efficient within a mixed order list. You had someone like Alex Harrison doing really well at some events with his Waywatchers, spamming bows, spamming Glade Guards, Celestial Huracanum, etc. That goes back to my personal list building checklist. I'm not a fan of spamming one particular unit type, but if you are, more power to you. It's your hobby. It's your player. Your list building preference, whatever. So the bows versus sides, but that equation might have changed a little bit for a couple of reasons. I think bows within Sylvaneth Allegiance were. I thought they were reasonable. They were fairly well pointed at 180. They were not well pointed within mixed order at 180. They needed to go up. Sides and swords needed to go up a little bit within Sylvaneth Allegiance and mixed order Allegiance from 180. I think 220 is very reasonable. But now I think there's a little bit more efficiency in the swords and sides versus the bows at 220, especially because the additional factor, because allies. We can get that efficiency made up with our shooting through allies, Waywatcher, Knight-Venator, maybe Judicators, Hurricane Crossbows, Long Strike, Vanguard Raptor, Hurricanes, or Long Strikes. That's a whole other thing. But Waywatchers are at the top of my list in terms of making up that efficiency for a few reasons. They're 100 points. They synergize really well. We'll get into that in a minute in the next build. But yeah, so I love size. I did an article on this talking about a lot of Sylvaneth players competitively, like Les Martin, Facehammer. He really popularized the 1 unit of 6 sides. There's a lot to be said for it. They could go into a Frostlord and Stonehorn with Battle Brew and still blow it up in one go, or just devastate the hell out of it, because one activation, and you get 2-inch reach. You're going to get all of them in there. especially if you got somehow you able to get it damned on there or something. So yeah, that's the obvious value of that, is that one activation, blow the hell out of something. I'm a huge fan of the 2x3 sides, which doesn't apply to this list, but the other two lists, or at least one of the other lists, it gives you so many things. It gives you board flexibility. It allows you to bunker both of the sides in 2 different spots on the board and screen them up with Dryads or Revenants, or or even just a bows. Like a lot of Sylvaneth players, they don't use their bows aggressively enough. Bows, their freaking 60mm footprint in a Wildwood, dude, they're gonna take up a ton of space. You can chaff up a unit coming in, and then the sides are still swinging over the top on your bows.
Right.
And yeah, so I think bows have incredible utility in that role as well. Particularly
you got to take out the characters. It's all about dropping those other weak and vulnerable characters.
Yeah,
they can take just serious damage. Yep.
Absolutely. It's easier to put. It's very difficult to put 6 sides in one Wildwood with a unit of 10 Dryads screening them. It's very difficult to have all of that in cover. But if you're doing the 3 and you're doing the 10 screen bubble wrap, you get all of that in cover, and you've got enough footprint to have the enemy come into you, roll at least 1 for a deadly roll. If they know the pile-in trick, they're not going to roll for many, where you just move 1 within a ½ inch for the charge, completion successful completing the charge, and then you pile in, just in case anybody doesn't know. You only have to roll for the deadly on the Sylvaneth Wildwoods. If it is heroes and monsters, do not have to roll, and you only have to roll if it is a charge move or a run move. Pile-in moves do not have to roll. So you just complete that first charge, get it within a ½ inch, and then everybody else piles in. So anyway, yeah.
That's a big distinction. I have forgotten that one. And I know that my opponents have forgotten that. Because I have seen situations where a behemoth, sometimes a character, has avoided going into the woods after some of the guys that are bunkering, thinking that it's still the case. Now, I could be benevolent and tell them, but if it's a tournament, I mean, you know, oops.
So this is what I was about to say. I felt so bad after playing a guy named Dave. I'm forgetting Dave's last name. Dave, as part of the guys from Wisconsin, as I always refer to them in Brennan jokes, guys from Milwaukee, Wisconsin, amazing gaming group, a lot of really gifted players, Age of Sigmar players over there. So Brendan and Dave, they were at the Battleshock Bash tournament put together by Lucius Meyer, Battleshock podcast, and I felt so bad after that game because Dave was running like 18 freaking Skull Crushers, 3 units of 6, and is going to be doing D6 mortal wounds to me. So, of course, with that, if you lose one of those Skull Crushers, it knocks off the D6 mortal wounds. It drops it down to D3 mortal wound. And I did not tell him about the pile-in trick. He didn't know about it, and I felt horrible after the game. So going forward, I made a rule where I'm going to tell every player, look, make sure you do the pile-in right, where you're minimizing your deadly rolls. But yeah, no, I could see that, especially if you've got D6 mortal wounds coming your way.
You're a good man.
Well, I wasn't that game, but I vowed to be after. So anyway, yeah. So I get to talk to you for an hour about the advantages and disadvantages of 3 sides versus 6 sides. I just think there's so much to be said for it. Board flexibility is number 1. Bunkering them into Wildwoods. You often, I think, are going to need to have the 2 units as opposed to the 1 from the standpoint of responding in your games, with multiple objectives on the board. There's also the issue of when you need to go you need to alpha strike something hard. And so as opposed to only having 1 of 6 sides, navigating Realm Route and looking to pop a 6, now you've got 2 chances to pop that 6 and make one of those. So it's kind of little things like that.
It's also, those situations where you may get 2 charge rolls. You could fail one.
Absolutely. Get 2 charge rolls. Take Warsinger. I was kind of joking around with David, the organizer of NashCon. Dude, I'm going all aggro Sylvaneth for this tournament, which turned out to work remarkably well.
How well? Why don't you tell us how well?
Well, I was on the last table to win the tournament, and then I completely fell on my face and went against the entire strategy for why I was at the tournament in the first place, and didn't throw my 6 sides. Actually, I was running 6 sides. Was I running 6? No, I was running 2 of 3. I can't remember what I was running. I think I was running the 2 of 3, and I didn't throw. No, I think I was running, actually, in that case, the 6. Either way, I didn't throw one of them in there, and that probably cost me the game. I won't go into the details, but it was just I didn't apply what I did the entire tournament, but shouldn't have been up there anyway.
What got you to the end?
Exactly, yeah. I shouldn't have been up there anyway because I got lucky on one game against Siege. I should not have won that game, but anyway, neither here nor there. But that's another thing with Sylvaneth is that against certain armies where like you're facing Tzeentch with massive mortal wound output, and you're like, what the hell am I supposed to do in this game? Sometimes there's something to be said for just going alpha. And you maybe want to have a list that gives you at least that opportunity to where you can play for the double turn. That is, but if you don't get it, your game, your night's going to be ruined. Your day's going to be ruined probably. But that came up in a tournament over the weekend where I was going up against 18 Skyfires, Kairos, Lord of Change, and a bunch of chaff.
I know that list. I see it in my nightmares.
Yes. So I went. Now part of the issue with that, if you're playing a player that chaffs correctly, it's going to be difficult to get any of your charges off on any of the juicy targets. And so anyway, that's a whole other thing. It's not a great solution. I don't really know I don't really know how to play a mortal wound output like that yet. I haven't really quite figured that out to try to, that is to optimize. Yeah, it's so difficult. Because I was thinking about turtling up, you can go like Alamoing, but that didn't really make sense to me either.
That's what I did. To go off on a little bit of a side with my my undead, I held back because I couldn't beat the guy with range, and if you move forward, you're just going to have everything. You're giving them targets. It's just a target-rich environment. They're just going to pick everything off. So it's really just you have to. The only good thing is that I was a 14 drop, so I was basically no way I'm winning the drop game. So I was automatically going to take turn. The second. He was going to go first. And he played the shenanigans of making me go first, and I was like, okay, I just flattened everything further back against my side of the board.
Nice. How many models did you have?
Oh my god, a lot.
Exactly. Well, that's the problem with Sylvaneth, and maybe Stormcast. I think Stormcast got it maybe a little bit more tactical flexibility because Signs of the Storm, where definitely Stormcast got it better than Sylvaneth against an army like Tzeentch or that kind of army, that kind of build out. Because of course, Signs of the Storm, yeah, sure, you've got to pop that 3. But with Sylvaneth, I cannot keep my entire army off the board because the opponent can simply just zone out the Wildwoods.
Right.
They'll just simply zone out, and where the hell am I going to go? Yeah. So that's a limitation there, which is good. But so yeah, you've got to have some models on the board. Again, unless you're going to maybe run unless you're running like a Horde Dryad army, you're probably not going to have that many models. My preference is to run elite armies anyway. So I only got many models on the board. I can't take much damage. If I'm just Alamoing, he's moving up. He's got what, a 24 plus 16. He's got a 40-inch threat range. He could deploy them if he knows I'm going to do that. Because he probably is. I'm going to finish deploying first. He's going to put them on the line 12, 50. So like, there's nowhere to hide. He can just simply move them up, shoot the crap out of me. Anyway, so yeah.
Comment from the chat is from Nika. No, Sylvaneth, you get the objectives and you gain points and make him fight you where you want to fight. The Skyfires do damage in range, but not enough to kill everything you have. I actually disagree with that. With the second half of that, I agree. I agree. That's the main tactic with most of these types of armies, with that bunker mentality that you're talking about, alpha bunker. You gain the objectives, you bunker up, you make it hard for them to take it from you. You make them pay for it if they do, and then you tar pit them if they try to do it. You bloody them heavily, or they're just going to waste their time trying to churn through you. But I will say this. That list, which I don't think we're going to see much of anymore because of the way the GHB 17 is built with new points and new structures and with the cost of battalions, we're not going to see 27 Skyfires as easily as we did before. But even 18, I've seen plenty of 18s. They can dish.
21. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
And yeah, they're brutal. So let's move forward. I know we've been here we're going to move on 2 hours now.
Yeah,
we haven't even got to the second list, but we'll move through the other list pretty quickly, I'm sure. Let's move through. Finish up with this no allies list. You got some really great strategy with this, and there's a wealth of strategies. Final thoughts on this particular first list before we move on to the next one.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it is really oriented for trying to get that one drop and off alpha bunkering, maybe also alpha blocking with your big unit of 30. Or maybe one of your 20, and yeah, just putting the pressure on the enemy to have to come in and fight exactly where you want to be fighting from the comfy confines of those Wildwoods. And then you've got your Frostheart Phoenix. You can use, he's a great utility piece. You can use him in different ways. You could use him as that alpha blocking piece where you get him on a 2-up save, 4-up, feel no pain, hopefully damned, heal him back up with regrowth, throw him into the enemy lines, use him to block some of the units up. And yeah, I think that's, I'm not convinced it is sufficiently competitive from a general purpose standpoint, but I think there's some legs to Winterleaf. There's some legs to Forest Folk by itself.
It's a lot to remember. There's a lot of moving parts here.
That's true with pretty much any competitive Sylvaneth list, I would say.
True, and that gets you at the end of the 5th game, man.
Yeah.
you need a break. You need a massage.
Awesome. Yeah.
I would probably take that, like you were mentioning earlier. I'd probably take that 20 Dryad unit and make the other one a 30. And even if you don't have the points to spend on something else, just get yourself a triumph. Because you're down points on your opponent.
Yeah, that could be valuable, definitely. And I think some folks might overlook the 30 Dryads, thinking that, well, I'm not going to get them in cover, and it's a huge footprint. Well, neither of those are really big issues, because you should always have them at a -1 to hit. You should always have, probably for running 30, you should have Mystic Shield on them. And even if 10 get taken off, you're still at 20. And once you get down to 20 or even 20, 21, 22, it gets a lot easier to get them into cover. And then you're still well over 12 for that +1 to save. So anyway, long way of saying, I think there's a lot of value in running those big blocks to 30. And yeah, you're getting that discount of 30 points off with them. But all right, so yeah, moving on to the Norwood Allies. I did want to give a couple shout outs to builds that were not, I mean, there's so many different builds that you could look at. A couple shout outs to, let's see, Ironbark War Grove, another mega battalion. Real quickly on that one, there's Frank Krifka. He is on TJ.community. So Frank, we did a podcast a long while back. Really thoughtful Sylvaneth player, like Nico and a number of others. Swarm of Seals as well on TJ.community. Frank has been looking at an early build with Ironbark where you can take up to 0 to 2 Dwarden units. And so I know he was looking at 1 unit of like 9 engine riggers. So engine riggers, for my money, are still one of the most efficient best buys in order as a whole. They're one of the few things, and well, I guess now that they're D3 damage on their, I think, drill cannons, they've gone down a little bit, but they're still pretty damn good. Anyway, engine riggers, Ironbark, looking at some of the options you can take with your Carriage Run Overlords or even your Fire Slayers, maybe at least 1 big block of 30 Volkite Berserkers with a Rune Smiter. This is a list that Nico is particularly well known for and has had some success with. Kind of another way, again, that alpha blocking, alpha bunkering. And so yeah, I think Ironbark is going to be worth a look. Another one is Household by itself. That might be one of the new templates. So Norwood is so expensive, you might be seeing a number of people running just the Tree Lord. Yeah, with the Household. So that's worth a look. What else? There is, finally, the Dreadwood War Grove. Now that Spite Revenants are battle line, Dreadwood War Grove is truly the ultimate Alpha Strike list in the Sylvaneth faction.
Somebody had mentioned that in the chat. I Duff had mentioned that. He wanted to know about the Dreadwood War Grove and what your thoughts were.
Absolutely. So why I probably would never run this is, again, all of this is from a general purpose competitive standpoint of, I'm going to be playing 5 games, 6 games. How can I optimize my odds for winning those games while staying within the parameters of my list building? Like not, having some challenge in the list, not taking the most filthy, Sylvaneth list imaginable, all this within those limitations. Alpha Strike is going to run up against certain builds. Dreadwood War Grove Alpha Strike is going to run up against certain builds where it's just going to be a one-trick pony and it's going to fall apart. Like I think Tzeentch. I think it'll fall apart against Tzeentch. And Tzeentch is still going to be very prevalent. So what one version of this is Dreadwood requires 4 Spite Revenants. So Dreadwood War Grove is a mega battalion. It is Outcast as the secondary required battalion. Outcast is normally 3 Spite Revenants. With Dreadwood, it's 4 Spite Revenants. So you probably run MSU, 4 Spite Revenants and Dreadwoods, and then you throw in Alarielle and probably 6 sides. Those are your 2 Alpha Striking units, Alarielle and 6 sides. And then whatever else you can fit in there, which I won't go into the details. You're going to need more bodies. You're going to need some Dryads. You're going to need bodies to go along with that. Maybe a caster, but the key piece there is the 6 sides and Alarielle. So with Dreadwood War Grove, quickly, if you pop with, it's got this little little table with 3 abilities that you can get as benefits before the start of the first battle round. And you roll a dice. On a roll of 1 to 2, you get 1. On a roll of 3 or 4, you get 2. A roll of 5 or 6, you get all 3. The key roll that you want to get is a 3-up. to get 2 of the 3. The first one that you're always going to get allows, in a, again, first battle round before anybody's gone, you get to pick up one of your units on the table and redeploy them just outside of 6 inches, I believe, of any enemy units.
That's not bad.
Yeah, but you still get to move. So you're probably going to be guaranteed a 3 plus charge. Yeah. All right, so you do that with your 6 or 9 size, depending on how alpha strike you really want to get. If you go with your 9 size, you're not going to have many bodies on the table. I think that's going to be especially a one-trick pony.
Yeah, not in the new meta.
Yeah, and they're also not going to be in range, probably, of getting Mystic Shield up on them, because, again, you're going to have to redeploy them somewhere. Yeah, maybe, I guess, 12 inches. Maybe you could get Mystic Shield on them with Alarielle. But, yeah, so, okay, so you do that with them, 6 or 9, and then Alarielle. You put Alarielle up on the line, 12 inches, and then she, if you pop that 3 on the Dreadwood, she is that other unit that you get a free move with before the game begins. Alarielle moves 16 freaking inches. So she's going 32 inches in battle round 1. So she's going pretty much anywhere on the board she wants to get another 3 plus charge. Yeah, man. I think you can maybe look. I was going to say, yeah, no, that's not going to work. Yeah, I was thinking about a Loremaster, but you're only going to get the Loremaster and the Null Root. Eldritch Council is unfortunately not an ally. Anyway, so that's a ridiculously powerful alpha strike. It's going to give a lot of people, a lot of lists, a very bad day, but it's going to fall apart against a number of other lists. So I'm not really a huge fan of that.
Yeah, I love the idea of doing stuff like that, but it usually doesn't win a 5-game 2-day.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So let's jump into these other 2 lists, and let's try to focus on the stuff we haven't talked about. So, for instance, the Gnarlroot allies. Let's specifically talk, I guess, about the what didn't appear in the first list. So, the inclusion of the Tree Revenants, the Loremaster Waywatcher, the Eternal Guard, and then I guess the Gnarlroot itself. So, what would you want me to put up?
Yeah, absolutely. All right, dude. So this is my latest iteration of theory hammering Sylvaneth. We're trying to come up with a 5-game tournament build that, again, fits the various parameters that I listed earlier, my personal list building preferences. And so Gnarlroot, if anybody doesn't know, which there's probably not a single soul out there who doesn't, but in case there is, Gnarlroot's one of those mega battalions that requires a household. Normally with a household, you have to take a Tree Lord. In this case, you have to take a Tree Lord Ancient. You get Seekers of Knowledge, which they did finally fact it and clarify that any Tree Lord Ancient, Branchwitch or Branchwraith in a Gnarlroot War Grove can cast 2 spells and unbind twice in each of your hero phases.
Was that the recent one, or was that a previous FAQ?
Yeah, that was a recent FAQ.
Yeah, okay.
That they did that. So that was how most of us played it, and yeah, so they finally clarified that. So that's amazing. And then so they can each cast an extra spell and unbind an extra spell in the enemy hero phase. Yeah, and then they each get access to Verdurous Harmony, which synergizes incredibly well, in particular with Kurnoth Hunters. So casting value of 7, you pick a friendly Sylvaneth unit within 18 inches, and you can bring back 1 Kurnoth Hunter, or bring back D3 slain Dryads or Tree Revenants in a unit, up to, of course, replenishing, like, as you know, death replenishes up to the max unit size, right, whatever the unit started out as. So yeah, that's Gnarlroot was the most popular one. It's still, it's outstanding. I think we're going to see it less. We'll see, but I suspect we're going to see it less because it was previously 100 total, 80 for Gnarlroot, 24 household. It's now 250 total, went up 150 very appropriately. I think that's quite reasonable for Gnarlroot with household. Gnarlroot is 180, household is now 70.
It's a good deal. We're talking about what is it, like an eighth of your points?
Yeah, it's an eighth of your points. Yeah, big chunk. All right, so going back to the list. So like I said, this is my attempt at putting together a general purpose list, and I'm still not necessarily convinced it's going to be sufficiently viable. This is the one I'm going to start playtesting on Saturday. Okay, so Tree Lord Ancient, he's a general. Same build out as last time with the last list. Drycha, same build out. Verdant Blessing, Branchwitch, same. Okay, Loremaster. So as part of Gnarlroot War Grove, you can take 0-1 Order Wizards. A lot of folks would run Sisters of the Thorn. Sometimes folks would run a Loremaster, sometimes a Battle Mage with, say, Wild Form to allow your unit of 6 size to reroll wounds. We saw a number of different build-outs, but the Loremaster Usually you saw that with Durthu to allow Durthu. So what Hand of Glory does is it's a casting value of 5, and you pick a friendly model within 18 inches. You do not need line of sight, which is really critical. Pick a friendly model within 18 inches. It allows that model to reroll all failed hits and wounds.
It's perfect for Durthu.
Perfect for Durthu. It makes him worth 400 points. Maybe the only thing in the game. But yeah, so you get that on Durthu, and he could reliably be blowing up units with 36 damage or some 30 to 36 damage. All right, so which I think that's going to be a tough build out again because of the need for bodies, because you're going to have to take Durthu and an Ancient and a Loremaster. You might have to, I don't know. You're not going to get a lot else.
How many points is Loremaster?
Loremaster is only 100. I thought he would go up.
That's reasonable.
He's still a very good.
Yeah, but he's stuck in the Eldritch Council, and the Eldritch Council is really just an ally at this point. You're not going to see. They even said it. I think it was Pete Foley actually made a comment about that. That you don't hold your breath on the Eldritch Council kind of getting fleshed out. It really right now is.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
It's really just going to be an add-on right now. So it doesn't surprise me.
I heard Martin Morin was really excited. He'd been running Eldritch because I guess you're getting a lot more points now in Eldritch, which is cool. But yeah, you're probably right from that standpoint. Most folks, it'll be very rare in a tournament that you'll see an Eldritch Council other than allies. Okay, so going back to the list, this might be an odd one for some folks when they see it, because normally you think Sylvaneth and Loremaster, obviously you think Spirit of Durthu. The idea on this one is, well, it gives you another spell for Roused by Magic, but more importantly, it can turn, it can turn your Ancient and Drycha into a beat stick. And it pairs really well with Waywatcher. So that's the next piece. So Waywatcher is another ally from the Wanderers, 100 points. Again, was a little surprised that it didn't go up to 120. Waywatchers are, for my money, the most efficient shooting buy that Sylvaneth have at the moment, including everything that they got as options. Okay, so we saw these a lot in mixed order, particularly with Celestial Huracanum. So another hero, which is really great for Sylvaneth builds, like Duality of Death, give you another hero body. 4-up save, solid 5-inch, or 5 wound, solid 6-inch move, great. The bow is the key thing on these guys. So 22-inch range, so a 28-inch threat range, respectable. 3s and 3s, -1 damage. Now, a couple abilities just make these guys just ridiculous value. Invisible Hunter, they're a -1 hit for shooting against them, so only shooting. But that's the key thing that you got to be worried about. They've got this ability which has 2 options. I won't worry about the precise shots. That's not the one that's you would probably ever take for the most part with this kind of build. Fast shots. This doubles up the number of shooting attacks. So now they're at 6 attacks, 3s and 3s, -1 damage. If they did not move in the movement phase, you add 1 to the hit rolls. Now you get to trigger the fast shots. You get an extra attack on 6. Now you're triggering that on a 5-up. So you could potentially get, let's say you get, okay, so you're going to get 7 attacks on average if they did not move. I guess actually if they stayed put, yeah, you probably either way, 7 to 8 attacks, 3s and 3s, -1 damage. Take a damned. Again, regrowth goes off. Heal those wounds back up. Hopefully you're looking at maybe at worst a 4. He took a wound, but now he's at a +1 to hit. And now he is hitting on 1s, and he's doing his extra attacks on 4s. I love this guy. And put Loremaster on him with Hand of Glory first turn. Dude, he's like, I mean.
Oh my God, he's got a machine gun.
He's got a freaking machine gun. First round, 28-inch threat range. I love that combo.
That's great.
You're always going to put it on him probably that round 1, 5-up cast. You should get that off Hand of Glory. And then later rounds, if your Loremaster is still alive, you put that Hand of Glory on Drycha or Ancient wherever you need it.
How many points is the Waywatcher?
100.
Oh, so 200 points for that those two guys in combo.
200 points for a machine gun.
That's pretty sick. That's pretty sick. Yeah.
Yeah. So I love this guy, and he's a -1 hit. You don't have to be within 3 inches of Wildwood. Yeah. So okay. So going back to the list. So that's that. And then again the Hand of Glory is amazing on Ancient. I use that a little bit with Moonstone back in the day. So again, 4 inches outside, you get off that charge. Hopefully he's fully healed up or only 2 wounds or less. So he's now coming in with 3 sweeping blows, re-rolling all of that, 3s and 3s. Often, as we know with Durthu, not very reliable, but you're re-rolling everything. You should get all of those in. -1 rend, d6 damage. Shooting attack, Doom Tendril Staff, 1 attack, 18-inch range, 2s and 3s, -1 rend, d6 damage. Sylvaneth players will tell you, again, 80% of that fails pretty much almost 100% of the time. Loremaster Hand of Glory, that's going to go off much more reliably now. So it really helps him. Drycha, let's say Drycha, you know that you've got the Enraged on her, and she's now doubling her attack output in combat. She's got 12 attacks with her Slashing Talons, 4s and 3s, -1, 2 damage. You're re-rolling everything with Hand of Glory on there. That's nuts.
Yeah,
so
it's scary.
Yeah, I just love if you can keep that freaking Loremaster alive and you can get off that 5+ cast or 4+ with Arcane. I love the utility that he gives you with an all-root build without Durthu, with these 3 pieces, Waywatcher, Ancient, and Drycha, based on kind of needs, opportunity, etc.
But if they're focusing on that guy, then they're clearly not focusing on something else. So that could give you a little more longevity on something, like maybe your Branchwraith.
Exactly. All right, so those are the heroes, and then you've got
Eternal Guard.
So you've got real quick on there's a lot of debate about do you ever run 10 Dryads? So there's a lot of debate on that in the Let's Chat Sylvaneth thread. Some Sylvaneth players will swear by you never run 10 Dryads. You would run 5 True Revenants alternatively. I won't get into the details of that debate. I've always ran in my prior Sylvaneth build 2 units of 10 Dryads and 1 5 True Revenants, and the reason for that is because of the footprint and the model count that those, well, in this case, as opposed to 1 unit of 10 and 2 units of 5 True Revs, that extra unit of 10 Dryads gives you. It also gives you a little bit more, I think, flexibility for screening off like sides. But either way, in this list, I need the bodies. You need bodies with these objectives and with these 20 or more model count rule, with likely a lot of these armies going up in model count, wounds, etc. So yeah, that's the idea of 2 of 10 Dryads there. And 5
you don't need to have it from 1 single unit, do you? I mean, the 20 is total, isn't it?
The 20. If I wanted to run it with the current build right now, I would have to get another battle line. If I ran 20 Dryads, I'd have to.
What I mean is the objective for being able to score the objective.
Oh, if you want to apply the 20 or more model,
it's 20 or more in a unit.
In a unit. But otherwise, outside of that, as long as there's not an enemy model within that's 20 or more within range, you just simply you can win on model count from the total model count spread across units.
So it is spread across units. That's the one thing that I wasn't sure about. I wasn't sure if I had read that.
In normal circumstances, just in those 2 scenarios, Skull for the Past and Total Conquest, where that 20 or more rule can come into play, that 20 or more, where the 20 or more rule takes precedence, that has to be from 1 unit.
From 1 unit. That's what I thought. So this particular list has only 1 unit that can do the override, but you could still score from totality, from combination.
Right, exactly. So the idea of this list, getting into that, so skip ahead to the Eternal Guard, dude. Freaking Eternal Guard are nuts. The value of these guys, they're in my top 5 right now, what I've seen.
We debated the use of these guys early on and whether or not they were worth it. But I think we're talking about different meta.
Yeah, we are. Yeah, they are, I think, going to shine in the new meta. Okay, so real quickly run through them. They were 80 for 10 in prior GH17. They are still 80 for 10 models, but they are now, I can't believe I'm going to say this, 210 points for 30. Let's just like let that sink in. 30 models. I think you could probably actually fit them into a Wildwood. 30 models. Obviously, I'm only going to do 20 for this list. Get 30 of them in a Wildwood. Get them rooting down with their Fortress of Bows. These guys are made for Wildwoods. They are going to be hitting a 2-inch reach, hitting on 3s, winning on 3s. Sure, only 1 damage, but saving now on a 3-up, rerolling 2s and 1s. I mean, that is just, I can't believe the value of that. So the idea of these guys is a unit of 20. I can only fit 20 with the list, with the way kind of the nature of the list right now, is the role of them is like total conquest, blood and glory. I've got 2 objectives in my zone. These guys are going to be deployed to sit on one of those objectives. They're going to probably be deployed where I drop my acorn. So I'll have them right by. I'll do the template down, do 2 Citadel Woods, kind of push them together, no gap, because you cannot get cover save if you got a model extending across a gap with Wildwoods, with Citadel Wood bases. They clarified that. So yeah, their job the entire game is to bunker down on one of those objectives in Total Conquest. For Skull for the Past, same thing. Bunker down on my objective that is 4 points to my opponent, and of course zone out 6 inches in both cases to prevent any models to get within 6 inches. So that they cannot trigger the 20 or more model rule. They're going to have to weed through those 20 Eternal Guard. So that's their role for a lot of these scenarios, is just to be that bunker, and that allows the list to have the flexibility of using those other 2 units of Dryads, 5 Revenants, sides, etc., to then go and strike and contest for objectives in my opponent's deployment zone. And hopefully that makes sense.
Yes. All right. So you got a couple points here that you can save, hopefully for a triumph, unless you're facing somebody with equal or less. Something that a lot of people do forget, if you don't go right up to 2,000, you know, there's a good chance you might get like a reroll armor saves or to hit rolls for 1 unit for one point in the game. That can be very valuable. There's something to be said to have 10 or 20 points under the total.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely, man. Yeah, so 1990.
I'm really looking forward to this next one here. Alarielle, because and I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why. Yeah. I have Alarielle. She's sitting in a box. Right. And I have vowed I am not going to open her up and paint her. I'm using Vince Ventrello's theory of reward. I have to finish painting up all the rest of my Sylvaneth before that crease that seal gets broken. The problem is that I now have to add more stuff to my Sylvaneth army because of the new meta before I can go get to her. So I really want to see what you have to say about this particular one, because I like big models. I like to have one big piece model in every, at least one. And Alarielle is just beautiful, and I hope my skills will improve by the time I actually do get to play her. So let's focus here on that. Tell me what this is centered clearly around Alarielle and Drycha.
Yeah.
Tell me the overall theory on this list.
Yeah, definitely. I feel the least confident about this one. This was, kind of like you. I vowed to figure out a tournament viable build with Alarielle. That was the first vow going into GH17, but that was before seeing all this stuff like massive regiments and 20 more models with a scoring precedent, all of this stuff that seemingly on paper is going to lead to a lot more models and a lot more wounds on the table, which could also impact your ability to use her appropriately, because she's got a mini pizza plate, and it can be, as you probably can appreciate, very difficult to drop her where you want to.
I usually play Nagash or a Vampire Lord and a Zombie Dragon. I am well aware of how big this plate is.
Yeah.
Is she a 130 millimeter or is she 160?
160. She's the biggest.
She's the bigger one. Wow.
Yeah.
Even Nagash is a 130. Wow.
He's 130. There's very little that's 160. I think the Maw Crusher, the cabbage, is 160.
Yeah, he's a 160.
But that's about it that I can think of. Yeah, most things. I think even the Vampire Lord is 130. Anyway, so that's another potential problem with her in the potential presumed new meta with a lot of models, etc. But yeah, man, I also want to figure out a way to make her viable. I mean, to be fair, I don't know if it's any consolation for us, she was pretty competitive at the tail end of GH16. I mean, if you knew how to run her, pretty good generalship. There was, I think, maybe it was Bobo as well, or it was either Bobo, British won Bravery Open. Did I get that right? Bravery won British Open. I think that's what it was. I got this wrong like 5 times in Warhammer Weekly. Bravery won British Open. I think that's what it was. They either finished 3rd at that one or at the Eggs, the Element Games Grand Slam, 2 UK tournaments last month, right before the GH17 hit. Either way, yeah, it's going to be tough. All right, so this list, yeah, it's really centered around her. Drycha's in there with the expectation that you're still going to need a way or another. Not necessarily. I don't know if you actually absolutely need Drycha. I think that's where you could swap out because, again, as we know, Alarielle's Beetle, as long as she's charging, well, even especially if she's charging in, she can blow up big units. So 3s and 3s, -2, 5 damage, 5 attacks, I think, on the Beetle.
That's okay. It's all right.
Yeah, not too bad. So I don't know if you necessarily need Drycha, but if you definitely want to go hard anti-horde, you've got 2 models there to do it. So you've got Storm Skirmlings, the Beetle blowing up. You could potentially have 2 models, individual models, blowing up 2 large units in one go. So I like the idea of that. It's a lot of points in 2 models. But Branch Witch, again, for the Acorn of the Ages, Throne of Vine, same idea.
Did she go down? She went down in points, didn't she?
Alarielle is now 600. She went down 20.
She went down 20. Not so much, but a little bit.
Yeah.
You're not taking her as an ally.
No. Yeah. So same idea with the build out on Drycha and the Branchwraith, just in case one of those goes down, you still got a way to get some woods out. So that's the notion there. Knight of Zeros. That was mainly for a couple of reasons. I only had 80 points left over. Not a whole lot you can take in allies. That's solid. I wanted to get another body, a body that had some nice resilience, in particular for Duality of Death. Get a hero with 5 wounds, 3 up save, 2 up save, and cover in the case of the Knight of Zeros. But the Knight of Zeros pairs pretty well with the 3 Kurnoth Bows and Alarielle in this list. So if anybody doesn't know, a Knight of Zeros, 12-inch fly, and when you get within 10 inches of enemy units and you target them with other friendly units, so in this case Alarielle and or your bows, you can reroll once to hit. So that's amazing, particularly for the bows, make them be a little bit more reliable. And something like Illuminator of the Lost, yeah, that's what it is. Reroll hit rolls of 1 against enemy units that you're targeting. Enemy units are within 10 inches of that Zeros. It's got another ability, the Light of Sigmar, which often does not come into play. It can be difficult to get it to go off. But if you can, you get within 8 inches of enemy units in your hero phase with him, you can light them up, and it's D3 mortal wounds to all enemy units within 8 inches. Or, even better, Chaos units are D6 mortal wounds. So again, you're probably going to be facing Chaos a little bit in tournaments. So I like him for Duality of Death, another body, puts out a little bit of punch in combat, get him at a 2-up save, and then pairs well with Alarielle's Spear of Kurnoth, whatever her spear is called. It's basically a skull cannon shot. her spear. So it's like 2-up, 3-up, -2 Ren, D6 damage. So just make sure you can probably get that off on something that you're lighting up with Illuminator of the Lost, and then pairing with the bows too. So that's that, and then 2 10 of Dryads, 2 5 Tree Revenants, a little bit more utility. 1 unit of 3 size, get a little bit more punch on the board. And then the 20 Eternal Guard, same thing for bunkering one of your objectives, one or more of your objectives in your zone, or one of the objectives in your zone. That's the list. A little bit anti-horde. It's not really maximizing Alarielle's healing because there's only 2 units of 3 Kurnoth Hunters. A lot of builds with Alarielle would have 12 Kurnoth Hunters on the board. But I think it could be competitive. I think it'll run up against some lists that'll get blown off the table. But I think it could be decent.
Well, very nice. It's this great series of lists. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing there. Yeah, there we go. Dude, we're back.
This is more than I've talked in probably a year. This is very incredible.
Look, these videos are notorious for going. If they don't go an hour and a half, they can go as long as you've seen some of the ones that I've had with Tom.
Oh yeah,
2.5 hours.
I'm one of those, like, the more the better, but
paint while you watch, man. Paint while you watch.
Absolutely.
All right. Look, final thoughts on Sylvaneth. Anything to close out, just in terms of what people should expect, what people are in for, whether it's painting or just moving lots of models or whatnot.
Yeah, I mean, the sky's not falling. Our battalions, like a lot of armies, took a big hit. I still think we're going to see some 1-drops on the board. One of the key questions, like I said, in my mind is, do we need to do a 1-drop or not? Or can we be sufficiently generally purpose competitive in a 5-6 round tournament without relying on that 1-drop? I think that's going to be really fascinating to see. Generally, they're still going to be good. They're not going to be blowing up the tournament scene. They're not going to be winning a lot of tournaments. I'd be shocked if they're winning a lot of tournaments. There's a lot of other factions out there that are definitively stronger. I think there's some new factions now that are going to be as strong or stronger than them. But all else equal, as best I can tell, they're in a great spot. They're amazing for hobby, narrative, casual, match. Like, they're still firing on all cylinders for my money. And they've got a lot of other ally options we haven't even talked about. I mean, Celestin Prime, he could be fun. Bring him down, blows up and up. Knight-Venator, you can pair that with a Loremaster. Rerolling hits and wounds, make him kind of have the Loremaster Hand of Glory as the equivalent of a Luckstone. A lot of Stormcast players like to put on them, so that you're doing the Star-Fated Arrow first round, sniping off a key hero piece or whatever in your enemy zone. That can be a nice little combo. Errant Questor. I've been on about the Errant Questor, that Warhammer World exclusive model, as a essentially model that gives you the equivalent of 5 extra wounds for your big hero piece. So Alarielle is now 21 wounds. Ancient, 17 wounds. Durthu, 17 wounds.
I'll have to find somebody to go special order that for me.
Yeah, man. And then the Errant Questor is incredible for Duality of Death because he is a 3-up, as a lot of the Stormcast heroes are. Get him in cover. He's a 2-up. He ignores Rend. Nuts. and he can reroll charges to get into combat. He's got a couple of other options. He's a great utility piece, but I love him for that reason alone. You know, if you're going up against, again, a lot of Skyfires trying to blow Alarielle off the board first go, that could be a way of helping her survive and then be able to do her healing wounds. But
5 extra wounds.
5 extra wounds. Yeah. Fulminators are great. Obviously, you know, they can be a nice piece to slot in. Vanguard Raptors with long strikes, Hurricane crossbows. I think there's something to be said for them. I'm not a big fan of them. I'm definitely not a big fan of Judicators. I think a lot of people, when they first look at Sylvaneth allies with Stormcast, are going to go to Judicators. I'm not really buying into Judicators yet. No, too little mobility, too easy to tear through. Just not good enough, I think, for what you need to do with them. Vanguard Hunters, though, are interesting as a last one because of, again, of their ability to come in on any board edges. They're very durable. They're like more durable Tree Revenants with a little bit more general damage output. So I think there's something to be said for them too. But I've rambled long enough.
No, not completely long enough, because why don't you tell people what events you're going to be at next, where they can find you and some of your content, and then we'll close it out. Yeah,
so I'm at Scrubbing Wells. So Scrubbing Wells on Twitter, SCRUBY and WELLS. Shoot me an email at tyleremerson@gmail.com if you ever want to chat. Sylvaneth, I cannot seem to shut up about Sylvaneth. Particularly on the podcast. So I do a podcast, Scrubbing Wells podcast. You can find links to everything at scrubbingwells.com. And yeah, I just came out with an episode today with Brendan Melnick, really good Age of Sigmar player I mentioned earlier, where we were talking about early impressions of GH17 right before the book came out. So yeah, going to be having a number of shows looking at different factions, obviously the trees, and kind of trying to get a mind wrap around the builds that we might be seeing. As far as tournaments, yeah, man, I don't have anything planned for a little while. I got to get a list down that's decent, and then get the models, and then we'll see. But definitely going to be trying to making it to LVO in January, Adepticon March. Might try to make a couple of one-dayers, but yeah, I'm not too sure what the next one is. I've done 5 tournaments over the last number of months, and I've done fairly well with Sylvaneth. But I think I need to take a break for a little bit here.
Think about June coming up to my neck of the woods. Big prizes at the Triumph GT.
I couldn't believe the number of prizes that you won. You had available and that you won at that last one. That was nuts. It
was top prize was 600.
Wow.
So I'm going to order a new army.
I'll definitely be coming up your way for that.
top painted was also 600. I think second place was 3 and third place was 2, and everybody walked away with a 6x4 mat.
Oh, that's so cool.
Play mat from Frontline Games. Yeah. It was pretty sick. It was the guys funding it really went to the nines. They were really looking to set a tone of quality and grow it from there. And I'm glad they didn't go too far. I wish they had marketed a little bit more. I think we'd have gotten some people out. Initially, they wanted me to do the color commentary. And I think most of the players probably wish I had done the color commentary. But I think that I'm debating whether I'm going to do that next year, if they're going to bring out a crew to do that. And if we get big enough, maybe we can get the GW guys to come and visit. We'll see about that. But I think next year there's going to be a lot of people interested in that, just because they're going to try and ramp that up. They're going to try and they're trying to make a thing. They're going to try and spread it to not just be AoS, but they're going to make it AoS centric.
You probably, I know that it sounded like you guys didn't have that many like really ridiculous lists at that one, but you could easily run into that going forward when it becomes too well known. And might have to look at trying to do some things where you're incentivizing in the way that it's actually designed, so that you're not just seeing everybody show up with absolutely disgusting lists. Unless you want to, you can always do it if you want to, but obviously. Definitely.
Well, in this case, we had secondary objectives that were secret, so very cool. Adepticon-like. So it wasn't just straight out of the box. So there was definitely some curves, but I know for a fact that they're looking at trying to add another layer to try to differentiate things and try to make it so that it's not just smash face. This was really about objectives, this one, and
cool.
it was fun to be at, but I have to admit the lists were not not optimized. There was maybe about I think about 4 or 5 lists that were really brutal, really tough,
right.
Quality enough to go and kind of be at some of the big shows. But the rest of the field were kind of they were spread out in terms of their capabilities, and I really believe that the draw for the higher end talent, the higher end players for next year is going to be big. So put it on your calendar. I'm already marketing for them. I'm doing more marketing than they did for this one already.
Yeah, do you know the exact dates yet?
It's June. I don't know the exact date, but I'll put it in the notes. And of course, cool. I'm going to be telling people about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I love it.
Yeah, I'm going to pull Conor McGregor and probably retire, so I don't have to worry about defending my title.
I'll have to get you on the podcast too. There's so many people who I've been wanting to have on the podcast, and I could rattle off lots of excuses, but I won't spare you. But I would love to have you in the podcast sometime. Anytime, let me know. I'd be happy to. It'd be a lot of fun. Yeah, man, definitely. Thank you very much for joining us here today. This was a wealth of information. I think we came close, not quite, but came close to actually breaking our longevity record. We're obviously going to have to keep going, because that's what I'm supposed to do every time I show up on one of these things, is to break the record. That's your routine when it comes to Warhammer Weekly, right? Warhammer Weekly, yeah. So, all right. No, it's a fun fact. I mean, I'm unabashedly in love with this faction. I'll shut it. I can't stop talking about it. It's competitive if you play it well, and if you get a little lucky. But it's not a Sunday morning army. It's not a point and click army. There are certain builds that will go up against it and they'll have a bad time, and that sucks. But that's rock, paper, scissors, Warhammer. That's how it should be. That's unavoidable. One of the things that I love about it is that it can be as complex as you want it to be, and it is an advanced army. There's a lot of moving parts. There's a lot of things to remember. You're not going to walk into Sylvaneth and master it right away, because there's too many things you need tokens. You need to know your abilities. You need to know your synergies. You need to be able to play those the movement game and the deployment of your forests well. There's so many factors that come into play. It's a very thinking person's army, but you can build a basic list and still have a good time and be competitive with it. Absolutely. I think that what you said is exactly right. I think you can be competitive. I think it can be a winning list. You got to play it well to be a top tier list against some other armies that I think they have a lot easier time just remembering all the different layers. Right. 120 bloodletters. Push them forward. Yeah, exactly. That's a good one. I mean, that's one really nice. Yeah, the Spider Riders, straightforward, or a bunch of Thunder Tusks and Stonehorns, which is not going to be as much of a thing as it used to be. Which again, I don't mean to. I'm not really intending that. It's always hard to have some nuance in this. It's like, the intention is not to have a value judgment, but it can come across obviously like it is a value judgment. If you're Paul and you love running massive amounts of Spider Fang, dude, that's awesome. It's an awesome list. More power to you. If you love running tons of bloodletters, more power to you. It's in your right to do that. Yeah, I love the variety. It's so many different things. We didn't even talk about the teleporting thing with these guys. I can't believe they freaking fact it that you can teleport out of combat. And still, I can roll and pop that 6 and move to get a 4-inch charge off with my hunter. We talked about this. I argued this point for a while, that it didn't count as a retreat. Yeah. And I could see the other side, but I've been wrong about my calls before. I mean, who the hell am I? I'm just another jerk on YouTube with a channel. But I've been arguing that point, and I was really happy to see that they did that they put that in there, because there's a number of abilities now across many different armies. Absolutely. Yeah, that allows you to kind of retract from combat, teleport, and it doesn't really penalize you as much doing it. It's a part of the game now. It's not just one or two armies that can do that. Right. And it's another thing that's going to help Sylvaneth and probably other factions maintain their competitive level. Because if I can retreat bows, and as long as I'm not popping a 1 and have a way, retreat them out and Verdurous Harmony to get back another bows. Oh, dude, Seraphon look insane, man. I just lost my speaker. All right, we're gonna call it. Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. Have a great day. Next one up later on tonight, Soulblight. Death Soulblight. All right, man. Thanks so much. Cheers, buddy.